Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the ATI Podcast. We are here for episode 103, and we've got some very special panelists with us today for our discussion on our favorite films of 2023, doing our year-ender thing here. Just going to go around and introduce the room real quickly. Of course, all these faces should be familiar to our audience if you guys have been following us along over time. First, I'd like to welcome back to the program filmmaker Ian Fischer. How are you doing, Ian?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And we, as a collective, that is our podcast collective, Ian, we're talking about ways to bring you back onto the show. And we thought this was a really great idea to bring you back, especially with your expertise and various fields that not only have you practiced, but, you know, being an educator as well in film. And so you can kind of address this at many different angles with your selections today. So we're really excited to have you.
Awesome. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So we've got Brandon Stewart, of course, from Edaws Inn and Knobnard's Closet. How are we doing, Brandon?
Doing good. The weather's probably not as good as LA, but we're hanging in there.
I would say that Texas is an improvement from Missouri, but lately it hasn't been too much different. Oddly enough.
There's not. Yeah, there's probably going to be a winter storm that kicks in. Possibility that the power goes out again. It's
that's
life
the
or
Texas
death in
thing.
Texas. Yeah.
Right. Lawlessness out there.
Yeah.
Well, folks, I'm just going to run over the agenda today real quickly, and then we're going to touch base with Ian, what he's been up to in the last year. So today, of course, if you guys have seen our year-end episodes before, you kind of know how we do things. We're going to talk about male and female performances of the year. We're going to bring up one of our sleepers of the year films, that is. We're going to talk honorable mentions, and then we're going to get into our top 5 films of 2023. Just some other quick housekeeping things. Thanks to anybody that tuned in for last episode, our favorite albums of the year. That was quite the epic journey, about 3 hours. Most of that was myself and the guys from Waxing On, and Brandon hopped on at the beginning of the call to give some of his picks as well. Josh had a list that we read out as well live on the feed there last week. So that episode will be dropping on demand next week. So be on the lookout for that. That being said, yesterday, Ridge and Jake's episode for Waxing On, episode 19, dropped with their interview with hip-hop artist Asher Roth, and a very awesome discussion. They got some real nuggets out of Asher. I recall Asher whenever he, popped in the MySpace music realm when that was a thing, and some of the hits that he had, and I didn't realize he was still doing it until Jake smartened me up, and really cool guy, down to earth. I highly suggest folks checking that out as well. So that brings me, of course, to Ian.
Hello.
And what Ian's been doing since the last time that we talked to him. So, Ian, I know that you're still doing your micro drops, of course.
I've been doing it daily for 3 years. I think I have 1,100 of them right now. It's a new art form I created. That's pop video art. They're all under 30 seconds. And it's been an amazing experience. And I am now looking to get into doing more commissions. I've done some commissions. So if any of the audience checks it out and they're interested, please reach out. I've been a filmmaker. I made my first film maybe 30 years ago, and I taught filmmaking for a decade back in New York, screenwriting, producing, directing, fiction, documentaries. I've made a documentary, I've made music videos, I've made short films. And so I'm going to start consulting for people who want someone who has experience with filmmaking and who has taught to help people in your audience be able to make either their music video, their short film, their script, their documentary, and I could take them through everything I've learned having done this. If my contact info is on the website, it is on the website, but if it's on your website, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to help.
Absolutely, and you're talking to the right audience here because, of course, we talk to a lot of musicians and filmmakers and documentarians as well here on this program. A lot of them new and early in the game and not with your years of expertise, particularly, being an educator too. You've seen kind of all kinds of things as well from that perspective too. So I think that you're a huge and great resource. And, of course, being a guy that's checked out your work, I'm a fan as well. So I can't recommend
Well, thank you.
reaching out to Ian enough if you're interested. So anybody who didn't catch our conversation with Ian previously, he was back on episode 44 in season 1, kind of rounded out things there toward the end of that season with us. And we got into the weeds with some of his historical work. So I highly recommend folks check that out. I'm going to have that in the episode details for this on-demand version as well. I have the link for his first appearance if you folks want to go back and check that out. Guys, we're just going to get right into it today with our list because I know we've got some ground to cover here today. So we're just going to kind of take turns rotating around. I've already got the format laid out here, and we can go about this any which way you each individually want to. So there's no right or wrong way to it, but we're going to start with honorable mentions. And you can go either heavy on one film, or you can do like a punch list of 4 to 5 films that you would characterize as being like, let's say you're 6 through 10 or in that range. So something that didn't make the top 5 for you, but you still have a lot of love for this year. And
there's several movies on my list that I want to hit up and mention out there. You had listed it on yours, and I just spaced on it. Tyrone. One of
they clone Tyrone.
Fantastic movie. The comedy's great. It's a grind film. Like, it's a grindhouse film, in my opinion. It's fantastic, and it reminds me of Attack the Block a little bit, in the sense of its craziness, everything that's going on in this area, or especially with Tyrone. And I'm just going to go through these kind of quickly. I want to say Leave the World Behind left me a little bit hesitant because I know that it was produced by Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, which kind of makes me feel a little bit weird that they produced a movie about the end of the world. It was extremely entertaining in the dark sense. It really set up things on a realistic level that was both depressing and felt really like tangible, like real. How to Blow Up a Pipeline. That is one that I found out through another person that's been on the podcast before, Mondo. He had mentioned some things about it and gave it some praise. That's something to me that was actually, there's actors that you know from that movie, actors and actresses from that movie, a little bit of star power, like B-list actors. It really was like kind of a fresh film that I did not expect. It says it within the title, right? But the context and the relationships that revolve around that group actually makes, again, everything very real. So I don't know if I'm going on a depression kick of realistic movies. The other one that I want to mention is Sanctuary. If you haven't seen Sanctuary before, if some things, let's put it this way, it's definitely something I'm going to remember for at least a long while. It puts a bad taste in your mouth, which will be the theme of my movies today. And it makes you feel a little bit icky. Both individuals in the film, it's just 2 actors, an actor and an actress, basically going through a fetish. The last one that I will say, and a lot of people will hate me for, is that I didn't put it in my top 5, but The Boy and the Heron. It was an excellent film, and I really loved the message behind it after I looked it up a little bit more. It definitely has to do with loss, like most of his films in Studio Ghibli. It just didn't catch my attention as much as previous movies I've seen by him. And then, of course, I have to end on Mutant Mayhem, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because
that was great.
it is nostalgic as fuck for me. I remember having a Rubbermaid tub full of late 80s, early 90s Ninja Turtles that were bought for me as a child that I cherish. And now my kid gets to see those as a young boy, which I never thought I would ever have a boy, but that happened. And now he's asking for Ninja Turtles, and he thinks the best one is Rocksteady. And I'm like, you're fucking cool as shit, man. Like, this is awesome. Yeah, it's that to me, it should have been in my top 10, but I think it deserves a little bit more standout praise for that. I hope that they make several of these and they stick to Seth Rogen assisting with writing and everything. It was fantastic. But that's
And Jackie Chan was in it. How amazing was that? As Splinter. Yeah. And just the fact that
was perfect.
All to do their own thing after the Spider-Man, the Miles Morales across the Spider-Verse and all that really has stuck its flag into animation and into doing something different. And they did their own thing, and it totally worked. I list all the movies I watch because I watch so many. I tend to forget what I've seen. I hate accidentally rewatching one. And so last year, 2023, I watched 600 movies, and 130 of those were movies made in 2023. Some of them might have been Lifetime movies, or some of them might have been TV series, but there's still a bunch, like a lot that you mentioned, that I still have yet to see. In going through the list and seeing what was most kind of memorable, special mention, or on my list here, I just said batshit crazy. 65 is one of those. That's Adam Driver going back in time and hunting down dinosaurs. And it's done by the guys who wrote A Quiet Place. While it was a big swing, I don't think it was successful, but it just was so out there. I would love to see more movies take big swings like this. So 65 was interesting. Another one I saw is called Nefarious. It's a horror movie. And I find I watch a lot of horror movies, especially, and it's traditional that most people watch a lot more horror movies during times of strife and war or economic issues because they're a safe zone to retreat into and to confront your anxiety. So I find that happens to me. So this Nefarious, what's interesting is essentially a 2-person piece that takes place in a jail. And it was written and directed by some pro-faith guys who make those, Christian evangelical movies. So this was one of the first horror movies, plays it being a possession movie. Actually, that is what it is. And for a 2-actor, 1-room movie, they really did. My hat's off. Every time I see a low-budget independent film successfully execute their premise and not make me miss the fact that it's so low budget and only one location, and to see, because there aren't that many pro-faith movies that really tackle, like possession. They might have The End of the World when the rapture comes, like Left Behind 1, 2, 3, which the first one of those, actually, I think in all 3 is Kirk Cameron, who's kind of like the Tom Cruise in this evangelical world, if you remember him from Growing Pains. And so there really hasn't been one about the devil and Satan. And so it was really interesting to see it on that level. And it hit all the beats about questioning faith and questioning God that these evangelical movies hit. And it did it pretty well. Another movie that was just out there was The Flash. Now, I saw that in the theater. I know the story because I read the comic, that Flashpoint. They even have an animated movie that they made a couple years ago on Flashpoint. But I felt like a little kid watching Michael Keaton again as Batman. I was able to forget what a troubled human being Ezra Miller is, at least for a few moments. And because I'm a geek, I loved all the callbacks to the other movies and all of that. I don't think it was perfectly executed, especially like when Nick Cage shows up as his Superman, it looks really weird. Although it was cool seeing him as a spider. The movie was a big swing. And I don't think it was the most successful superhero movie of the year. And in fact, quick side note, I think the most successful thing that dealt with superheroes this year was Gen V, the TV series that's on Amazon. It's a spinoff of The Boys. That really tackled superheroes. I would say this is the sleeper hit of the year, if I can jump to that. Suitable Flesh is a horror movie. It's an H.P. Lovecraft horror movie written by the guy who wrote Reanimator. Reanimator is really considered the beginning, middle, and end of bringing H.P. Lovecraft into the general movie-going audience, especially the first one. I mean, I think there are 3 of them. And the filmmaker, Stuart Gordon, who made those, he's now passed. But this was the closest to a Stuart Gordon, who's considered, the cream of the crop in making an H.P. Lovecraft movie, which has a lot of sexuality in it. And it stars Heather Graham, who is amazing in it.
She still got it. She still got it, my man.
I would give her female performance of the year that shocked me. Got Barbara Crampton. It's a lot of fun by this filmmaker, Joe Lynch. And so that's one definitely not to sleep on that I think could eventually become a cult hit if people still enjoy H.P. Lovecraft. Another one I saw that I saw in the theater and then I watched it again, so it makes it on this list anytime I see two movies, is M. Night's movie, A Knock at the Cabin. I don't know, did you guys see that one with Dave Bautista?
I have actually not seen that.
No, I haven't gotten to catch it, but the trailer always stuck out to me because our boy's in there.
I think it's one of his best movies in years, M. Night. But the problem for me with it, which is why it doesn't make my number one or my top five, is it's PG-13, and I feel it really needed to be an R-rated movie. When the bloodletting happens, it really diminishes, at least to an older audience who's beyond PG-13. It really kind of deflates the stakes, and the deaths don't seem to land in the same way. But I'm somebody who's seen so many horror movies, it just comes to an expectation. I want to see that. As they say, a PG-13 horror movie is one of the toughest things to do because you're really restricted with what you can do. But that's a movie I saw twice, and it pleasantly surprised me. But again, I think an R-rated version would have really taken that to the next level. Another movie I saw, which shocked me as to how good it was a Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, right? I mean, they've made Dungeons and Dragons.
I mean, we all saw the 90s version of Dungeons and Dragons movie. That was atrocious. We saw that in theaters as a child. I grew up with D&D since I was probably 8 or 9. And it's nice to see them do something good.
Right, for sure.
The acting was solid. The script was solid. Everything about it it was a home run. First off, I can't believe I'm saying that about a Dungeons and Dragons movie. It's better than I think. The problem was it was so much better than anyone expected, and some people just got turned off by the IP.
Not this guy.
I saw a movie called Kick Me, which is a independent movie about I think a high school guidance counselor, and it goes really crimey, and it was certainly memorable. The performances were fantastic, but I don't remember the specifics anymore. It's been so long, so that's why it makes it onto my honorable mention list. It's got a great poster, though. I got two others for you. I got a movie called Devils. Devils is a Korean movie that's about body swapping, and it has a cop versus a serial killer, and it's very much like a modern face-off. And it's the director's first film, and he really knocked it out of the park. I really hope to see more work from him. And it was a very interesting way to tackle the body swapping, which has never been, I've never seen that before. So that was a great one. And then finally, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was a lot of fun. I don't believe it was the best of those, but being an animal lover, it hit all my animal feels, and really making Rocket Raccoon such an amazing character, which, I remember reading him in the comics, and he was such a nothing burger, at least to me, when I was reading it, that they actually reconfigured the character to make me care about him is really, it's phenomenal.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, you had a few in there that intrigued me. The Devil's movie wasn't on my radar at all, so I'll definitely be checking that one out. No question.
Yeah, you definitely should. And, I think it hit VOD recently, and I think it played at Fantastic Fest and did, was an audience pleaser.
Nice. Well, you're talking to the right audience for that, too. Yeah, we're Fantastic Fest fans for sure. All right, so I'm going to hop into my honorable mentions, and Brandon spoke about this movie briefly a moment ago, and that is They Clone Tyrone. That is going to be and I'm just going to lean into one specifically. I'm approaching kind of the stuff on my list a little bit differently. I'm going to give some analytics, and then I'm just going to talk about why I liked it particularly. So They Clone Tyrone was released in June on Netflix, actually. Critic ratings, it got a 6.6 on IMDb, 95% on Rotten Tomatoes, 74%, 91% of Google users liked it. 119 minutes. It's first time directing by Jewel Taylor. And Jewel Taylor actually did some writing, wrote for 2 films previous, but his writing partner helped him write this film as well. He did the Space Jam movie, and I believe he did Creed 2, like the new Space Jam movie with LeBron James. So that one was kind of a miss. But Creed 2, of course, critically acclaimed. It stars John Boyega, Jamie Foxx, Tayona Paris, St. Louis or Kansas City native. I know she's Missouri native, so shout out to the homegirl there. J. Alfonso Nicholson, David Allen Greer with a very cool like little cameo in the film, as well as Kiefer Sutherland. I was a big In Living Color fan, so it was nice to see Jamie Foxx and David Allen Greer in this movie together. I always sing the praises of In Living Color any chance that I get. It's my favorite sketch comedy show of all time. It was only on the air for like 3 years, I want to say. But, whenever people start having those like Mad TV SNL debates, I'm always like, In Living Color. So I got to throw that out there real quickly. So the synopsis of this is a series of eerie events thrust an unlikely trio onto the trail of a nefarious government conspiracy, and it kind of becomes a pulpy mystery caper. So Jamie Foxx plays a pimp, John Boyega plays a drug dealer, and Miss Paris plays a prostitute. And they are within this community that stumbles upon the fact that their lives are being controlled and they're seemingly being replaced as they die off because they are like cogs in this machine that some corporate entity has started in major cities in particular, at least that you think, I think they're kind of native to the Chicago area in this film specifically. Kiefer Sutherland plays kind of like the big bad corporate guy, and you think that he's like the bad guy in charge, but there's a twist. There's somebody else behind the scenes pulling the puppet strings. It's not quite what you think it would be. Great humor in this. They play against and into stereotypes. I'm with Brandon on the fact that it's almost like got a grindhouse feel to it, kind of plays into that pulpiness. You could easily see this being like a blaxploitation film as well.
For sure.
Something in that universe without question. If you're like a fan of things like Black Dynamite, I think you would like the humor that's in this as well. A more recent movie of the last 20 years, right? Which has kind of some similar, humor in it as well. I just cannot sing the praises enough of this movie. It's to me, it's like the perfect popcorn flick. So it's like unfortunate that this didn't have a theatrical run because, I think that this is one of those comedies that would play well to a crowd and, be a great group experience. So I cannot sing the praises of They Clone Tyrone enough. I highly recommend folks check it out on Netflix. I believe you can get it video on demand as well, but Netflix has the exclusive rights for it. So
what's sad about Netflix, I was just talking to a friend about, when was the last great movie they've made? And it was very difficult. When was the last time I logged into Netflix to watch a movie? Maybe a TV series, but a movie. I mean, and even Roma won an Oscar, right. and no one ran for that. And it really does seem that because they release everything streaming, they really don't move the cultural needle at all. And so a lot of movies like They Cloned Tyrone, which I haven't seen, but I read was on a list earlier today while I was preparing. And it was listed as one of the best movies of the year. And I think they do a disservice to themselves by only doing streaming. I mean, they own the Egyptian theater, for God's sakes. They could be putting these movies in the theater to see how they play differently.
Yeah, that's a funny thing with some of these streaming deals, too, is it's not always published like what the finances are. I mean, it has to be profitable for the filmmakers in the sense that everybody gets their check, I can't imagine, that you kind of have that capitalism 101 thing whenever you have the theater release, it's the potential to make all kinds of money. And we're going to talk about some movies, today that just did some insane box office numbers that you wouldn't necessarily expect of them. Some with credible talent, some with no name talent, so there's always that chance that you can capture lightning in a bottle, be a cult phenomenon and be very profitable as well. And I think, back to our kind of the point that we're all making here, this film could have definitely been a very profitable theatrical run, I think.
Yeah. Remember Sharknado 2? I mean, that movie came out on Sci-Fi. It was so successful. I was in New York at the time. They put it in the theater just to keep, and I'm sure they made some money, but this was something that was being offered for free, but just to create the cultural relevance because these movies, comedies and horror or, traditionally do much better in the theater with a fellow audience helping, to create that kind of groundswell of emotion that you get caught up in. And when you hear someone laugh, it's even funnier. And we watch a lot of these movies in a vacuum.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, especially when it comes to those streaming movies. Yeah. So we're going to transition over into our fifth pick in our top five this year. So actually, I'm going to have Ian start that off for us. He is our featured guest here this week. So get things started for us, Ian. What you got at number 5 on your list?
Number 5 on this movie is a movie called Sisu. SISU.
Hell yeah.
Great.
Was one of the most fun movies I've seen in a theater in a long time. It's a World War II action movie that out Rambos, out John Wicks, has some of the most creative kills and characters getting out of danger through their own skills. It was astounding. And usually, when I think it's a Finnish movie, usually when Europeans take an American movie kind of concept and play with it, they take it even more extreme, just like Luc Besson did with Fifth Element and with Leon, the Professional. And that's also like what people did in the comic books, is like Alan Moore and all these English people came in and they said, we're going to show you how, from the English sensibility, we would do superheroes. And of course, that becomes one of the biggest comic books, Watchmen, ever. So Sisu was amazing. The filmmaker had made a film called Rare Exports before that I remember enjoying but not loving. It's a Christmas movie. I definitely want to rewatch it. But Sisu was one of those films that over-delivered based off of a really wild trailer and was one of the most fun movies I've seen in the theater in a long time.
Yeah, I have to agree on that. And I also have to say, who doesn't like watching a fucking Nazi blow up into bits?
Amen. Amen. That's exactly the line I was going to come at you with.
I love that. I love Nazis just blowing up right in front of my face.
Yep, it definitely had plenty of that in spades. So if you enjoy that, if you enjoy the overtop action, I highly endorse Sisu as well. So great pick there, Ian. I happy to hear that one make our conversation today. So I'm going to go in with my number 5 now. And this is one that might be kind of out of the blue for folks as well, because it didn't get a huge theatrical run. And that is Dream Scenario.
Yep.
I really enjoyed Dream Scenario. It just came out November 10th. Critics, where they rated things at with this, it got a 7.1 on IMDb, 91% on Rotten Tomatoes, 74 Metacritic, and then 77% of Google users liked it. The box office, it was 6.8 gross, and I think the budget of it, if memory serves me correct, was 4.5. I forgot to write that down on my notes. So it was profitable. 100 minutes long, an A24 joint. Director Christopher Borgli, I believe is how you enunciate his last name. And it stars Nick Cage, Tim Meadows, Lily Bird, Michael Cera, Jessica Clement, as well as Julianne Nicholson. The synopsis of this film is: a hapless family man named Paul Matthews finds his life turned upside down when millions of strangers suddenly start seeing him in their dreams. When his nighttime appearances take on a nightmarish turn, Paul, which is Cage's character, is forced to navigate newfound stardom. This is a batshit crazy movie. It is amazing. It's quirky. It's funny. It's darkly comedic. It has a lot of commentary on various things that I think a lot of people, or at least people in my circles that we discuss and we like almost despise about society nowadays. Commentary on social media, commentary on cancel culture, and the phenomenons that come with that. So it's just, it is a hilarious movie. I will say my favorite bit, and it's not really giving anything away because you have to see it to love it, in this entire movie, and this one's not for the children, so cover their ears, is the fart cum moment.
Yep.
And it is unbelievable. Yeah. I laughed out loud. That is probably the singular thing that I laughed out loud the hardest to this year in film, is the darkly comedic moment where Nick Cage farts and comes at the same time. So it is hilarious.
It's so fitting for him as a person.
It is, in a way. And Nick Cage, man, what a career revival, man. I've just loved everything that he's done in the last 2 or 3 years, man. He's just knocked it out of the park.
Have you seen Mandy? That's one of my all-time favorites.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Mandy is like probably top 5 films of the last 10 years for me. Yeah, I absolutely love it.
That's a solid state movie for the ATI podcast in general. So
yeah, you got to watch that movie to be a friend with us. Yeah, man. Just I absolutely love this movie. Nick Cage kills it on the performance. The family dynamic is hilarious. It's funny in a way to see Tim Meadows playing like a straight character as well. He's always like kind of the comedic relief. I think he's like one of the unsung heroes of SNL during his tenure there as well. I've always enjoyed Tim Meadows. Big fan of him. He has one of the all-time greatest comedic performances, in my opinion, in Dewey Cox, The Walk Hard Story, when he's like, you don't want none of this, man. It's marijuana. It's non-habit forming. Every time he comes into the room, he tries a new drug. Yeah, it's fantastic. But yeah, man, just a good movie. All the performances knock it out of the park. There's some like I think there's some commentary too about technology with this film and where we're going as a society, and marketing 101 and just all the crazy shit that who knows what's on the future. It's good. This film will probably be like strangely prophetic in some ways. They're
Absolutely.
talking. There's a bit in here toward the latter part of the film where there's like commercials in your dreams, and so. And the one last thing I got to mention about this movie that I absolutely love is I love any time that you can work talking heads into anything, and there is a very heartfelt moment involving talking heads that really hits you in the feels. So, Dream Scenarios at number 5 for me. Brandon, how about you? What you got at 5?
Well, there's a lot of movies this year that make us feel icky. I think that this is a perfect time for Ian. What you had mentioned before, like horror movies, really seem to pop up whenever there's like political strife or bad economic times and the like,
Or wars.
or
Yeah.
war. And I have to say that I really enjoyed this director quite a bit, just because he's a product of his father. Brandon Cronenberg came out with Infinity Pool this year. I listened to Danny, friend of the podcast, It's Just Two Movies, and his take on it, and he felt gross the entire time when I'm watching it. So I knew that this was a solid pick for my number 5. It takes you down a very sci-fi political commentary on the rich and powerful and what they do in situations where what separates them from normal people, and they go to this, I believe, fictitious country. It's crazy to think that this came out in January. Usually all my picks I feel like come towards the end of the year. I don't know, I could watch this movie over and over again. It's very bizarre. Basically, essentially you can do whatever the fuck you want on this island as long as you pay to make a clone of yourself that the locals can kill off. And I don't think that's given too much away. It offers it's got a stellar cast, especially the new queen that we have, Mia Goth. I
100%.
love everything that she's in. I'm not, I looked at Alexander Skarsgård's filmography, and I thought that was
Quietly, he's had a great career, I think.
I think he has, but there's a lot of movies out there that I'm like he's a great actor. I just don't
Mhm.
know if I would pick those specific movies to be. But I think he's starting to pick better roles now, and he's really honing in on his batshit craziness since his brother's doing batshit crazy shit. I love this movie. It's something that I would show to new friends to get them to understand the type of shit I'm into.
Very cool.
That's
How
fine.
would you compare that to Possessor?
I would say that, and I'd have to revisit Possessor, but I would want to say that I liked Possessor a little bit more, but
Yeah, me too.
I don't remember. I would say, from what I remember from Possessor, it's a lot of visual stuff
Yeah.
that is a
Right.
little bit more dissident and artsy.
A little bit more
This is,
esoteric. Mhm.
It feels
yeah,
more like a David
this is
Cronenberg
more
movie,
of a
not Brandon.
yes, and honestly, this film was like really a nice touch to his actual style, maybe, that he's going for, because it really brings the story out there. There's stuff to think about, but you don't have to think too deeply on.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's a brutal fucking movie. I mean, it's brutal and weird
Absolutely.
as shit. But yeah, I love this film.
It's funny that the timing works out like this. We didn't plan it this way, but my number 4 is Infinity Pool on my list.
Wow.
And so I'm just going to piggyback off of a few things Brandon said. And of course, I had mentioned that I was taking the more analytic approach with getting my discussion started for my film. So just to add to what Brandon said earlier, this did come out January 27th of 2023. Critics, IMDb had it at 6 out of 10, 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. Metacritic had it 72% and 60% of Google users liked it. Box office, this did 5.2 million and it was a 4.5 budget, so this was profitable.
Yeah.
118 minutes long. Neon distribution here in the States. I can't remember who the Canadian distribution was. Of course, written and directed by Brandon Cronenberg. You mentioned him earlier. Alexander Skarsgård and Mia Goth star in this, as well as Cleopatra Coleman and Thomas Kretschmann. And Cleopatra Coleman is, you may be familiar with her. She's in like a lot of the more recent Deftones music videos as well. She does a lot of the acting in that, especially for the last album that came out. Synopsis of this film is, while staying in an isolated island resort, James, which is Alexander Skarsgård's character, and M, which is Cleopatra Coleman, are enjoying a perfect vacation on these pristine beaches, exceptional staff, and they're also soaking in the sun. Guided by the seduction of a mysterious Gabby, who is Mia Goth, they venture outside the resort grounds and find themselves in a culture filled with violence, hedonism, and untold horror. So Brayden touched on this. There's like cloning going on. So like these guys are, participating in illegal acts. They go into a police station is kind of the premise of it, and they get the death penalty. It seems quite extreme, but that is what they've been ruled with. But they have an opportunity to do this alternative program, and that's they allow them to clone them. They kill the clone in kind of like a public stoning type event, if you will. The families are allowed to get their retribution, or at least to watch to get their retribution, if you will, as the clones die off. Brayden kind of mentioned this earlier. Of course, it has sci-fi elements. There's a lot of narratives out there about this film too, and this maybe is a little spoiler-ish, so you might want to plug your ears for this one. But there's belief out there that actually, so like a lot of people have a problem with the horniness of the movie. I will say that turns away a lot of people, but that's a Cronenberg 101 thing. And secondly, is just kind of the character trajectory of James himself. James, of course, gets cloned. There's a belief out there, I've read some people's takes on this movie, that as the movie goes on and it goes into later and later iterations of his character and the progression of his character, that it's possible at some point the original James actually was killed and you're seeing a clone, and that's why there's such a hard shift in character. Just like basic common sense lacks in some of his decision making as the film goes on. The movie is like to disorient you with intent, so I think like the Cronenberg family in general is kind of an acquired taste. I think anybody that's listened to our podcast once again knows that David Cronenberg's my all-time favorite director, and the apple doesn't fall far from the tree with Brandon. And I'm always going to be like very partial to Brandon because of A, who his father is, and B, what he's done already. Ian, you mentioned it earlier, Possessor. I love that movie, but Antiviral is my absolute favorite movie that he's done. What a fucking opening, statement right there. But he's always got a commentary, really kind of like, eat the rich type subtleties to some of his movies, which, I'm always like into that personally. And then, he's always infusing sci-fi. So, I love that as well.
What's your favorite David Cronenberg movie?
He has the ability to, Cronenberg is probably between Videodrome.
Yeah.
And I know this isn't like his most critically revered movie, but Crash was kind of like the big earthshaker for me. Like I saw Crash and I was like, I have to see all of his movies because, I didn't see his like filmography chronologically. So that's what I was like, man, I got to see like what this guy's up to. Like, is all of his movies this crazy, So that was kind of the gateway drug to all of his films. So that'll always hold a special place in my heart in and of itself, and really crazy performances in that as well. But, if I was to like look at it critically, I mean, you'd have to say something like Eastern Promises or A History of Violence, which are both fantastic movies as well. And Vito's one of my absolute favorite actors too. So, but love this film, Infinity Pool, and it's number 4 for me.
Real quick though,
go ahead.
You're talking about the Crash that won the Academy Award, right? That everybody loves.
Of course not.
That everybody's
Of course
seen.
not.
No,
I mean, that everybody watched and everybody fell in love with. And,
Brandon's got his little. Yeah, Brandon's bringing in the jokes here with the Brendan Fraser Crash.
I bring out jokes.
Sarcasm. All right, so that is my number 4. Ian, let's go with what you got at number 4 on your list.
My number 4 is a movie called When Evil Lurks. It is a horror movie from Argentina. The filmmaker is a guy named Damien Rugna. I believe it's his second movie, I believe. He did a movie called Terrified. Anyways, this it's an hour and 39 minutes, gets a 7.0 IMDb rating. I believe it's launched and is it originated on Shudder, which is a streaming service for horror movies.
Yes.
I know it did really well on the festival circuit. This was something I was really looking forward to because people were just talking about how relentless it is. And I would have to agree, it's one of the best horror movies I've seen this year. This is the, I guess, description here. In a remote village, two brothers find a demon-infected man just about to give birth to evil itself. They decide to get rid of the body only to end up unintentionally spreading chaos. This movie really felt like it did a great job with the kind of beginning of the apocalypse. You know, there have been a lot of great movies that deal with that, Prince of Darkness, other ones, but that's kind of been co-opted now by the zombie genre. But there's really the beginning of the end. It does. Even The Thing is kind of like, the Carpenter movie is a kind of like the beginning of Doomsday.
Right.
And so it did an amazing job. Performances were amazing, and it doesn't feel low budget. And that's really tough to do, to open it up. And there were some kills I'd never seen before. Highly recommend it.
Yeah, that axe sequence was a was a jumper right there. Yeah,
yeah, it was unsettling. We'll just say that it's definitely, if not number one, possibly number two. I would think it would be number one for horror films of the year for sure. And usually,
as far as kills,
yeah, I mean it's fucking brutal, man. And the concept is so fresh that they all know, they all know that demons exist and that the sickness takes them and they're going to become a demon soon, and that just common knowledge. It's like,
and it plays with the COVID fear of infection, so it really lands a little bit stronger. I found.
Yeah, it's funny, Ian, that you brought that up as one of your picks because, and I know you already gave away your sleeper of the year earlier, so this timing working out great. This is my sleeper of the year. I don't think enough people are talking about When Evil Lurks. I know it got a little bit of internet buzz, but I think, again, because of the Shudder release, it's kind of limited viewing. I know IFC Films also is a part of the ownership of this film. I literally got Shudder again just to watch this film whenever it came out, and I've been keeping up with my membership since because I was really excited about this. And the only other point I really want to add is that it's got a fresh take on possession in general as well.
Yeah.
That was something that I hadn't seen yet that I could recall, at least off the top of my head, on how they went about it. And man, the makeup in this is crazy good as well. All set in Argentina. Argentina-made film. Yeah, the bloated dude's crazy. The only thing I could harken back to, in my immediate memory, is kind of in Legion, of course. The TV series, the FX TV series based off the X-Men comic. The Fat Man in that, or maybe Spawn, John Leguizamo's character in Spawn, as well. Just the grotesque obesity that the initial possessed person, the demon, the bed-riddled person is that you see. And how they just totally fumble disposing of that person, and I guess that person's kind of the ground zero for everything that transpires, the chaos that breaks out. There is one other scene too that really was disturbing for me in this. Outside of the we mentioned the axe sequence, was the dog with the little girl inside the house.
Yeah, I was just thinking.
I knew it was coming. Yeah, that turned my stomach bad. Being a father and having kids, in that size range too, it was a little bit easier to see that as a possibility. Yeah, and that was shaking to see that. So, yeah, When Evil Lurks. I don't think enough people are talking about it. I could have easily made an argument.
Yeah, well, that's what I love about foreign movies. There really is a sense of danger in them, where they will kill the kid or they will kill the animal. Whereas in American movies, there's a safe. We have seatbelts in our movies, and we know the kid's going to be okay, the dog's going to be okay. But with American movies, there's very little progress in pushing the form because of the economic realities. Whereas a European movie, a Argentinian movie, a South American movie, a Spanish movie, a French, Korea, China, they go the extra mile and really push up against the boundaries. And I think if they do it successfully, then the American filmmakers kind of incorporate it. But what's interesting is how European movies are kind of like the new independent film. Just like Tarantino in the 90s pushed things. These horror, I would say in general, most of the content that you get from other countries pushes the art form, but especially horror movies, where it's very easy to see how much blood there is, who gets hurt. Is it, there's a amongst horror movies, there's like a sports-like aspect to it where you're looking to see a murder or a kill that is like nothing you've ever seen before. We're looking for the inventiveness that kind of gets down to like scorekeeping. And in that
Right.
case, it really is the foreign movies that really seem to do that, like the French New Wave movies,
push that
the
genre.
French Extreme Wave. I mean, like Martyrs and stuff like that. Really,
Another movie that if you're a part of this podcast, then you have to fucking put yourself through.
Yeah, that's a
tough.
rough one. Brandon, we still need to get your number 4, and since you're the only person who hasn't given away their sleeper too, let's just go ahead and knock 2 things out at once if you don't mind. So let's hear what your number 4 is on your list, and then maybe a sleeper film for you.
Yeah, this is a little bit easier one for me. There's several big Hollywood movies that came out this year, big notable directors that people usually flock to. Although I enjoyed Oppenheimer, I'm not a biopic guy, but Killers of the Flower Moon, Scorsese flick, the acting's phenomenal in it. I love the fact that he interacted with natives and actually heard their story. The ending speech by Scorsese is bone chilling and ground shaking for sure. The movie's just fantastic. I mean, it's got your standard fare. You have crime involved, crime family involved that's taking advantage of these people. I don't think that I've ever seen a Scorsese flick where I didn't think there was some kind of redeemable thing about them, just like
Sure.
something. And with DiCaprio's character, I felt nothing for this piece of shit. I thought he was the dog shit of the planet, and his uncle as well.
Yeah, De Niro's character.
Played by Joe Pesci, I think. That would have
Yeah,
been
of
Well,
course.
what's
funny.
interesting
But no, I mean,
Scorsese's collaborator, Paul Schrader, who wrote like Taxi Driver and things like that. He's very vocal on Facebook about his honest opinions. And his feeling was, who wants to spend 3 hours with an idiot? The Leonardo DiCaprio character.
Yeah, I did see that.
I tend to agree. Well, that movie, it was amazing to see a different view of the Osage Indians and something I'd never seen before.
mhm.
I have a real problem
Yeah.
with 3-hour movies. It just feels
Yeah,
way
I
too
do too.
gratuitous. I
I
felt
hear
the
you.
same way with Oppenheimer. I think every movie could be better, maybe half an hour shorter at least. And sometimes when you just
hour and a half,
sit there
2 hours tops.
forever and it just, this isn't the 1970s where you can get away with 3-hour movies anymore.
And the only thing that I can give it its saving grace on is every year around Thanksgiving, me and my wife watch movies all day. So we take a breather in between, we eat a little bit more, and then we watch the rest of the half. At least whenever The Irishman came out, then this movie came out. It's like we had our day to do it, but yeah, I'm with you on that. Hour and a half, 2 hour movie, you can really show me what you do with your skill. That's what my attention span's there for.
Yeah.
All right, so that was your number 4, Brandon. What was a sleeper pick for you this year?
The sleeper hit is actually the Royal Hotel. The Royal Hotel is about 2 women who have left Canada for some unspoken reason, some traumatic event, and they end up running out of money. They're vacationing, they're doing all their stuff. They run out of money. They hit up a service there to get a job. They're able to find a job, but it's out in the middle of nowhere in the outback, and it's in a oil field, I believe, oil or a mine. And they basically are going to be the bartenders for this place. And us coming from Bumpkin Town, U.S., there's a lot of trashy construction people and a lot of people work in factories, and they're disgusting with their language. They do not give a shit about women. They treat them like shit. And the whole while, it's this trial and tribulation with these 2 women and the horrors that they see out on their own. And it really, we know, right, that women deal with a different side of things than we do,
Sure.
especially with random men and the
Right.
pigs that they can be. this really drives it fucking home. I mean, it really makes you think you understand. I don't think you fully do until you watch something like this, because it's brutal and it's terrifying. I couldn't even imagine. I've been through some terrifying moments in my life with other people. I cannot imagine going through this same situation with nobody to back you up except for that other person. And that confidence in each other kind of dwindles a little bit to where somebody feels feels really isolated and they have no way to get out. So it's definitely a terrific flick that I think you guys should totally check out. That's my sleeper.
Let's pivot over. We've talked about some films here. Let's take a momentary break and let's talk about individual performances. So I tasked these gentlemen with picking out some of their favorite female performances of the year. It doesn't necessarily have to be lead. It can be, a supporting character or whatever the case is. But I'm just going to real quickly give you a runner-up, and then I'm going to go long form on who my number one performance of the year at least is for me. My runner-up is Lily Gladstone from Killers of the Flower Moon. She exudes a class on film, I believe, that is necessary to sell that movie, and sympathy for the Osage and what they went through. It's hard to, I would say, in Hollywood and in film sometimes to characterize, and it's just subtleties in her acting. In the grieving moments that take place in the movie, the body acting that she does is just. I felt like she is an actress. I'd never seen her in anything before, so just how incredible she was. This was just like totally out of left field for me. I mean, I had pretty high expectations of the film, knowing who all would be involved with it. But yeah, I really liked Lily Gladstone's performance, so she's a runner-up for me. But my number one is Sophie Wilde from Talk to Me. I believe that this is the best female performance of the year. They really took a gamble and talked to me with going with Sophie Wilde, because she was an unknown actress. As the Philippou brothers were shopping around this movie and actually getting some funding for it and stuff, they were actually told to like cast a known actress in the lead, otherwise they weren't going to get the funding, and they said no, and so their budget was cut back on account of it, and they still made this film, and it was wildly successful. She shows such a range in character and acting, being a person who's unfortunately, and I think we were all sharing in this before we got on the call today, dealt with a lot of grief in our lives, particularly recently. It's something that I don't want to say like become an expert, unfortunately, but like it's territory that is familiar to me now. And to see somebody acting it out with grace and really nailing, the big theme of Talk to Me is really grief and the crazy things that we do in grief, and she portrays that. And I cannot commend her enough for her performance. She's kind of the big sister figure to start, and the paradigm starts to shift in her character as events play out through the movie. And you can see her not only in writing going through this transformation, but body acting, you can see this transformation on screen. And she was doing things like staying up days at a time, so that whenever she come in for her shoot, even if it was for a couple hours, she would look even more distressed and strung out. Like she was staying up like 3 days at a time, only drinking coffee. Yeah, really getting into a method. And like hats off to her. This is her first like big performance. She's only been in a handful of things in her life. This is certainly her first, studio led film. And she really knocked it out of the park. And I think that we'll be seeing her a lot more in film going forward.
I absolutely agree. She was amazing.
Yeah, and I have the one thing I have to say about that is I'm not usually a huge fan of method acting, but hearing that, this was like her thought probably, which was, hey, they don't want me to be in this movie. I have to fucking go all out and show them what I can do. And she definitely performed in that.
Big swing, big knockout of the park.
Yeah.
Ian, what would be some female performances that you want to highlight this year?
Well, definitely Heather Graham. I think she, she plays a character who's possessed. And so she does a really great job bouncing in between all of that. She really uses her sexuality in a really interesting way that I wasn't quite expecting from her. And so I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
That might
I will say with her performance in Suitable Flesh, there's some like darkly comedic moments too that she does very well. and she has to like do kind of a yin and yang because she's like possessed occasionally, and so you can actually she does a great job of jumping characters as well.
I also, I'm looking through my list. I thought Tilda Swinton was pretty good in The Killer.
Yeah.
The Michael Fassbender movie. She had a small role, but I think she did the most with it that she could. I also think maybe she's underappreciated a little bit. But,
100%.
Those would be the two that pop into my head. That and, of course, Talk to Me really was amazing. What's interesting is I saw a lot of bad performances this year, and those pop up even quicker in my head than as to the stuff I thought was transcendent. I guess the only other one I'd really add would be America Ferrera, and Barbie was amazing.
Oh my God!
If you guys saw that movie.
For sure,
fantastic.
And she had a great role, and it was she blew me away.
Yeah,
well, Tilda Swinton. I think I can speak for us all, and I keep on saying this, so I'm going to stop after this. Is a loved actress of this podcast, and everything that she's been in, even if she's in a Marvel film, she gives it her fucking all. And it's beautiful to watch her work.
Yeah, I'd put her on my Mount Rushmore of female actresses. Her, Cate Blanchett, are kind of like right up there at the top of my favorite actresses for sure too.
I actually had the same as your runner-up, which was Lily Gladstone. It's rare that you get to find kind of a truly honest portrayal of a character. Like, at no point did I not want to like give her a hug or like help her along her way. I mean, she was a very believable. I mean, this is her, right? This has got to be Lily Gladstone. Honest performance. I think that she is almost like she's up there with these big name actresses, and this one performance, and I haven't seen anything else like Barrett, and I'm like, what the fuck? Where did she come from, and why is she not more shit? She's a very classic actress that pulls it off very well, especially in this drama, a little bit of a thriller there at some certain times.
Crime.
But
sure.
It was fantastic to watch her work. But Barrett is going to hate me for saying this, I think, because he doesn't appreciate this actress as much as I do. Emma Stone, holy fucking shit. Poor Things, holy shit. She acts so well that I do not understand, especially watching her in The Curse. And in this film, she acts as an infant. She acts as a teenager. She acts as a like a 25-year-old, like middle-aged. Like she does so well in this, and her comedy is so believable and so hilarious. One of the best movies of the year, and we'll get to that. But I don't think that this film would be possible without her. I know that it wouldn't be possible without her. She fucking killed it. For that, I have to say that even in fucking Cruella, she was amazing. She's a great actress, and I think we're getting into her golden age of acting, and I hope it only gets better. Hopefully, we get a platinum. But yeah, she was the best.
So I'm gonna lean in and Talk to Me some more. Talk to Me is my number 3. It came out July 28th of 2023. Critics gave it a 7.1 on IMDb, 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, 76 Metacritic, and 69% of Google users liked it. This is one of those movies that we kind of alluded to earlier that was a tremendous box office success. I would consider this somewhat of a low-budget film comparatively to like today's standards. $4.5 million was the budget of the film. This film grossed over $92 million, gentlemen. That is what you call a success. That P&L sheet is looking mighty fine for those folks. 95 minutes long, right at that perfect runtime that we've been talking about. Again, I agree with you guys. You're making this point earlier. Kind of the perfect runtime for a film, in my opinion, is like in that 90-minute range. It's an A24 joint, so yeah, I mean, we all love A24 over here on our side of things too. Directed and written by the Philippou brothers. They did have a person helped them with the actual writing, but as far as the directing, it's just the Philippou brothers. This is their first feature film as well. These
Right, they're
guys were pretty
YouTubers.
successful YouTubers, and they translated that over into a now seemingly successful film career. They've already been greenlit for Talk to Me Too, so this was well received. We mentioned her earlier. Sophie Wilde leads the film. Other cast involved with the film: Alexandria Jensen, Joe Bird, Otis. I think it's Dahanji, Miranda Otto, Zoe Tarakis, and Chris Alazio.
And Chris
so
Pratt, he was in that.
Yeah, he's in
He was-
everything, right?
He was in
I think that was one
Mario,
of
I
Miranda
think.
Otto's
Yeah, for sure.
better performances recently.
I agree as well. She's like one of those familiar faces that a lot of people be like, oh, I know that I've seen her in some things. So like Lord of the Rings and that sort of thing. So when a group of friends discover how to conjure spirits using an embalmed hand, they become hooked on the new thrill until one of them goes too far and unleashes a terrifying supernatural force or forces. This film, of course, if you've seen the trailers, you probably have an idea. This was like one of those films that, like the teasers came out, there was a lot of buzz around it. What's this film about? What could potentially happen in it? It almost kind of had that mystery box type effect with it, with the hand. So I always like viral campaigns like that. They were doing a lot of like the viral campaigns too over social media with the Snapchat videos of like the party tricks that were going on with kids with their eyes blacking out, rolling to the back of their head and shaking like they had seizures and stuff, which was then effectively used in the film. Very wild. This film has been often stated used for allegory for addiction. I mean, yes, you can make those conclusions. And listening to the Philippou brothers and how they actually came up with the idea of the film, it's kind of an amalgamation of ideas. And then certainly possession is, a part of, what takes place in the film. They're actually being possessed by these individual entities at various times. What I love, what this film does very well, it doesn't give everything away. So these are like, I'm going to probably be mentioning some things that are marks of what I consider to be a good horror movie. It doesn't give too much away, but it establishes rules that are very simple, and they follow those rules throughout the film. So this is almost like, I would like liken it to like lore of and the magic too of things like Nightmare on Elm Street. Like I think that's kind of a comparative thing that I could relate it to.
That's a good
Is
comparison.
that this group of kids are in an unfounded situation. They're not really getting help from adults. Adults are skeptical. They think, they're on drugs, this, that, the other thing, making up all the excuses in the world. And they're really dealing with adult issues. And I know that the Philippou brothers originally got this idea because a couple different things. One was kind of a huge traumatic event that happened to them, like in their neighborhood. They knew like some kid had done like too many drugs or whatever, and the whole neighborhood was watching, and they were like starting to OD, and like the first reaction was people were getting out their phones to film it instead of like actually calling for help. Yeah. So that was a part of kind of the inspiration behind them doing this movie. Also, there was some possession shorts in Australia of a similar ilk where these kids were going to some sort of party with a party trick, and they were starting to get possessed playing this party game. And things were getting out of hand, and that was the theme of the short. I can't recall the name of the short right now. So you can kind of see how those two ideas have kind of machinated and evolved and congealed in with one another. Where I think, and I mentioned this earlier, that the big theme of this movie is a big commentary on grief and the crazy, absurd things that we do in grief, how grief blinds us. Mia is searching for answers as a character, and that's Sophie Wilde's character that we mentioned earlier, the lead actress. She is an unreliable narrator. It does follow her point of view throughout the story. She is the primary character. The story is told from her perspective. And some of those rules that I mentioned earlier that are very simple and that they follow, they establish early in the film that these demons play tricks on people. And Mia is constantly being manipulated throughout this film. And it's causing her to, resort into a very chaotic and disturbing state that's affecting those around her. And it also like leads her to attempting to murder various people in her inner circle. I can't say enough good things about this film. I took advantage of the $5 National Movie Day to finally go see this. It's hard for me to get to theaters with 3 kids now, all very young, and no babysitters or support system in that regard. So it's kind of like capturing lightning in a bottle to get me to the theater. But this was one that I had to see in theaters, and so I made the trip to the theaters and saw this. And boy, was I I had high expectations, and it's rare nowadays that I go to see a film and at least it delivers, if not exceeds those expectations. So this is one of the few films I historically don't watch films like repeatedly. Usually, like in short windows of time. I've already seen this movie twice this year, or in 2023, that
I
is, and
love
that's
it.
really unusual for me to
Yeah,
do.
me too.
So
I love
love
that
it.
I love whenever you bring up that you don't watch. This has always been a thing with Barrett. Watch movies over again. He's like, man, I watched it a second time. That was a lot. And I'm like, I watched this movie 3 or 4 times. And the only reason why this didn't make my top 5 is only because there were things that preceded it that I just had seen that I'll always remember this movie because it reminds me of whenever I saw It Follows for the first time, and
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a great one.
a fresh take. Just it's so easy to get caught up in this, like there's a new Omen coming out or the first Omen, and like the new Exorcist, and it's so easy to get caught up in
Revisiting
nostalgia.
established franchises, right?
Yeah, nostalgia, but these are the films that really make us as horror fans. I
For sure.
truly do believe that, and I tried my best to stay away from horror. That's my number one genre. I tried to
Me
stay
too.
away from horror films in this top 5 this year, only
Same.
because those things are my beauties. I love all of them. It was by far a movie that I will probably purchase on Blu-ray, and cherish it forevermore because it's something I'll eventually show Liam.
Yeah,
That's
it's got a lot
great.
of rewatchability, a lot of great things that you could dissect from it.
At number 3, I have a movie called Jawan. Jawan is from India. The synopsis here is
I think I know this.
that a high octane thriller which outlines the emotional journey of a man who is set to rectify the wrongs in the society. One of the longer movies I've seen this year. It's 2 hours and 49 minutes. And it stars Shah Rukh Khan, who is considered to be like the Tom Cruise of Indian movies. And this is just, I've never seen his movie before. The last kind of Bollywood movie I had seen that I really loved was RRR.
Yep.
So I know going in, these movies are going to have everything be 3 hours or under, but they'll be singing, they'll be dancing, and music video, the most off the wall action scenes. I mean, these movies are a lot of fun, and he really, I could see why this guy Shah Rukh Khan, or as they call him, SRK, is such a huge star. He's got so much animal magnetism, and it's not an easy thing when you're watching a movie in a non-native language to really see what the fuss is about. It's not as easy because we're more used to people speaking in English in our everyday, generally, and so we can kind of gauge on that. But man, this guy, I can see why he's such a big star. These Bollywood movies are really doing. They're basically superhero movies where the people are just good fighters, without the superhero costumes. It was definitely memorable, which is why I wanted to mention it.
I really want to get more into the Bollywood stuff. I'm half the shit I watch anymore has subtitles, if not 75%. I recently started Alice in Borderland, which I fucking love. And yeah, I think international film is making more of a push over these last 5, if not 6 years.
Accessibility, streaming's made a huge difference in that.
I
For
just
sure.
want to
Netflix
see
is
it
really
more and more, man.
Netflix has really brought that in. I mean, especially with the success of Squid Game and things like that. I think an audience finds himself
Sure.
watching movies in a different language that they never expected to, because I think before the streaming, there was a huge resistance to reading subtitles for a lot of people for so many years. But I think Netflix has made it more acceptable. And it really is a different way of watching a movie if you're kind of scanning it and reading the words.
Oh, who doesn't like slurping semen out of a bathtub?
Yeah.
I know for a fact. All right, so me and Barrett made it a goal of ours. Me, Barrett, and Ridge made it a goal of ours to watch the most fucked up movies of all time. We want to see everything. We want to see people eating shit. We want to see people fucking farting in people's mouths. We want to see martyrs, which is fucking wild. We want to see it all. right?
I'm gonna say people humping
And
trash cans.
yeah, I want to see that trash can give birth. But I have to say, Saltburn, if you want your vampire teeth, take them out, baby. It's time to go at it. The reason why I love this film so much, the disgusting shit that happens in it is just like a topping for me of ice
Mhm.
cream. But it is seeing Barry Keoghan at his finest.
Yeah.
Barry Keoghan is a fucking madman that I will follow into the depths of hell. I think that he is my for sure favorite actor right now. Like, I love watching him work, even if he's doing these things that, like, this was the first film I think that I've ever seen him act semi-normal. And
And he
watching
was a
him,
psychopath still.
he's a fucking psychopath. I love watching this motherfucker. No matter what he does, he is
Yeah.
insane. The new, I forget his name right now off the top of my head. Jacob Elordi. He's
Yeah.
in a lot of
Yeah, he was
new
amazing.
stuff. He's Elvis Presley and Priscilla. He was in Euphoria, where he's an awesome actor in that. He's gonna go far places with his acting. I think that he is a very talented actor. The movie itself, watching the chaos that unfolds in front of you, like imagining yourself being put in this position and just watching all this bullshit is fucking insane. Like, this is Cronenberg at points. The dystopian, like what our future leads to. Like, it's a fantastic film. I would rewatch this film. The art style behind it is beautiful.
Yeah.
The music is great. And Barry Keoghan, man, bro,
Yes.
you're fucking going to places that you never thought you would be. You're fantastic.
Yeah. You mentioned the bathtub scene with the him drinking up the cum from the drain. And it has to be mentioned that he also fucked a
graveyard
grave
scene.
in this.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
last one being that it literally, okay, so I know for a fact whenever a film's going to be good, whenever Liz looks over at me, my wife, and she goes, "I think he's going to fuck that grave." And I go, "I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so." And then he starts to take down his pants, and I looked over her and I go, "He's going to fuck that grave."
That's great.
And the
Yeah,
disgust on her face, I love it.
this definitely had that eat the rich vibe that we've been talking about that we kind of enjoy with films. I originally was going to choose this as my sleeper film of the year, but this is getting a lot of buzz as of recent, especially since it hit Prime for streaming. I've seen a lot of people like. I think this is got a huge groundswell right now, like we're living in the midst of at this moment. So I decided to stay away from choosing this one as my sleeper. But Brandon, you kind of alluded to this. All the performances in this knock it out of the park.
There's not a single bad performance.
Yeah, everybody just absolutely kills it in this. Rosamund Pike as the mother is great
He's
as well.
great.
Carrie Mulligan, a little short parted and is like the crazy
Yep.
friend. Pamela, I think is her name.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just a lot of great performances in this, and it's really
Richard
cool
E.
once again
Grant.
to see Barry
Great seeing
Keoghan.
him.
Yeah, Richard E. Grant, love that.
Which is insane to see him in another film where,
He's such a classy guy.
God, he is just, and he's batshit in this. I mean, it's wild. Like, to see, and last year was kind of an eat the rich thing for me too with Triangle. What was
Triangle
the
of Sadness.
Triangle of Sadness was fantastic.
That was fun.
It's always the super rich, the ultra rich that I'm just like, I could watch their misery for all days and times. I mean, it's wonderful to watch such a beautiful performance of such a chaotic and diabolical situation.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are going to be talking about this movie for years to come for sure. So, and Ian, I'll let you get us started with your standout male performances of the year.
I would say Jacob Elordi. Elordi. I thought he really had a star-making role in that, and I've never seen him before in a film, and I haven't seen the Priscilla movie, but I can really see. I think he has it. There is kind of this magnetism that reminds me of a young Brad Pitt. Of being like the good-looking guy everybody wants you, and the disdain of that. I also wanted to say the guy and I'm going to probably mangle his name here, but Jorma Tomila, who was the star of Sisu, I thought was amazing,
Yeah,
especially with what he did. Very little dialogue, as I remember it. Very physical role for a slightly older actor, and it felt more like a spaghetti western in a way, with his reactions and with what he
definitely.
did, and so they were amazing. And I'll tell you who I was really surprised by, but Ryan Gosling in Barbie. I thought he really knocked it out of the park for what I was ready to dismiss as a doll movie. He was
Right.
great. I even think Michael Cera was fun in that movie, Barbie, where he plays Alan. You remember that? I mean, so
Definitely.
there were some good things. I thought, well, truthfully, I thought Robert Downey Jr. in Oppenheimer was really amazing. He couldn't
Absolutely.
rely on his kind of snarky persona that he had that led to Iron Man, and he kind of perfected it. And this seemed like one of his more human performances, which really kind of amazed me.
I mean, I'd be shocked if he doesn't win the Academy Award for supporting actor this year. That's really an incredible performance. And yeah, I didn't mean to overlook that one earlier, but yeah, for sure. And you're right. There's a little bit of a different nuance to characters that he's played recently. I mean, I think everybody's been like kind of superheroed out, marveled out to an extent, and certainly, did a great job as Tony Stark. Don't get me wrong, but it's nice to see him do just a huge shift and play this diabolical political figure in the film too.
And play someone older than him. It's amazing the lack of ego he had to play that role. Not that many men are willing
Sure.
to,
Yeah.
called caps.
Actually, I think he shaved his head for that film, if I
That
remember
wouldn't
correctly.
surprise me.
Because I remember
That's
on
the
social
next
media he
level.
shaved his head, and I was like, "That's wild." Yeah, I was like, "Man, I can't believe he shaved his head. That's kind of ballsy." But I mean, it's Robert Downey Jr. Do what the fuck you want.
Yeah. And yet, in no time, he grew it all back. It's weird. It's almost like Hollywood has a way of getting your hair back and just
Yeah,
being
what's
proud
that
of it.
about?
Lizard people. Lizard people.
Exactly. Brandon, let's talk about your male performances of the year. What do you got
Well, I have to double up on Jacob.
from Saltburn?
Yeah, he's really just. I've seen the kid kind of grow up a little bit in these recent roles. Go from Euphoria, where he was good, but he's a background character, and he's not. I don't think it's his acting. I think it's the writing behind it. I think it's just I'm just a badass, and I was like, I kind of fucking hate this guy. But then seeing him in this, I was like, oh no, he can actually play a kind of nice guy at points, like underhandedly, and the amount of emotion that went into his character and his performance was fantastic to watch.
Yeah.
I cannot say this guy's name, so I don't want to butcher it. I'm going to anyways. Ryunosuke Kamiki, lead actor in Godzilla -1. He did a phenomenal job. His reactions in this movie take me back to a time in Japanese cinema that was, like back in the 70s, 80s. This extreme behavior in these insane moments, his reactions to things, a lot of body movement that really shows the distress, the insane distress that was going on in that movie. And then, of course, our Lord and Savior, Barry Keoghan,
Sure.
he is phenomenal. He's my number one. I think he's going to be the number one for me for a while. And I'm glad I think that was he's been in several in Sharon. The kid's breaking out. Like,
Yeah.
Killing of a
He's in
Sacred Deer,
Batman.
amazing.
Right. Right.
Yeah, he's
As
in
a Joker.
Batman, and
Yeah.
in that small snippet, And in the past 10 years, I would say Killing of a Sacred Deer, having Colin Farrell in there as well, that's one of
Yeah.
my favorite films of the past 10 years.
Well,
It's very unsettling. It has a supernatural element. He's phenomenal. But the the two others that I want to mention are, one of them is my favorite, one of my favorites of all time, Willem Dafoe. that motherfucker can do no wrong. I
Agreed.
don't know I've ever seen him in a bad movie ever. I would have to
Agreed.
look back through his catalog, and I guarantee you I wouldn't find anything. Him as essentially a Dr. Frankenstein-like character in Poor Things, wow. And the odd shit that they do. It is odd as fuck. Very bizarre. And then weirdly, for me, Mark Ruffalo killed it in Poor Things.
He's a good actor.
Yeah, he is a good actor, and there's I'm not denying that, but he's not one that I would normally mention as like my favorites. He really kills it in this film as this pompous prick, which I don't know if I've ever watched him be in a film ever. He's usually the understanding guy or the heartthrob or Hulk, right? But his performance in Poor Things was bar none a nice stretch for him, a nice actor stretch for him that really wowed me in the end.
Yeah, I'm a pretty decent Mark Ruffalo fan. I think he's a great actor. I really liked him in Foxcatcher as far as independent roles and just kind of stuff out of the box you wouldn't have expected him to do here in recent years. Something that I think a lot of people didn't talk about with Mark Ruffalo too that I wanted to bring up real quickly was I Know This Much Is True, the miniseries that he did on I believe it's HBO where he played actually twin brothers. He actually one of the twin brothers, I guess, kind of the one that's more cognizant, is he's kind of an asshole in that, and there's a lot of nuance to that, and how he's trying to break away from like old Italian familial, like generational depression and abuse and things of that ilk. So it's a very emotional series. I highly recommend it to folks out there. So
There was another thing he was in. I mean, like I'm saying, he's a great actor. It's just not he's not normally the person that I look to. I guess after Hulk, the thing that those movies did to us, and although we may enjoy them, is it really took a lot of big name actors and put them in this singular role for the longest time. I guess your brain just kind of associates with them with those, but I think he was in the paper movie, the newspaper movie, New
Zodiac.
York Times.
Spotlight. Right.
Yeah, Spotlight and Zodiac. He was an
Right.
amazing actor. So
Definitely.
nothing talking shit about him. He's fantastic.
My two picks and not a name mentioned at all by either of you, so I enjoy this that I can bring a different perspective. We have mentioned these gentlemen though in movies that we've talked about previously, and that my runner-up for the year is Alexander Skarsgård. I really enjoyed his performance, seeing him play a different character for him, and again, like he's getting more and more risky with his roles, and I'm starting to appreciate him more and more as an actor. He comes from good blood. Stellan, his father, one of my favorite older actors,
Oh my god,
has played some of the most incredible roles.
iconic.
Yeah, especially his work with Lars von Trier over the years and things like that. I just great actor. And of course, his brother's doing great things as well, and I can't wait to see what his brother does in the future as well. Alexander really started to take a turn for me, obviously being in Robert Eggers' Northman last year, which I enjoyed tremendously,
Yeah.
and was one of my favorite films of last year as well. And this is just kind of staying on that, which is kind of funny. So yeah, Brandon and I talk about this all the time, and I would say like my favorite modern, quote unquote, modern directors would certainly be Ari Aster, Robert Eggers, Jordan Peele, Jennifer Kent, and then Brandon Cronenberg. And it's funny he went from Eggers to Cronenberg here. Hopefully, he does something with Ari Aster soon, or one of the other names that I mentioned. It'd be really cool to see him do some films with them as well. But yeah, big Alexander Skarsgård fan. I'm excited to see what he does in the future, and I think people will at least appreciate him if they give Infinity Pool a chance this year. My number one though, and Paul Schrader isn't going to like me, is Leonardo DiCaprio, and I'm going to give you guys reasons why. I probably would have went Cillian Murphy, and again, one of the greatest actors currently working, in my opinion. Either of these guys, really. But my wife and I, we see most of our movies together, so that's the person I primarily talk to about with movies, and we just kept making this point after seeing Killers of the Flower Moon that we were constantly forgetting that was Leonardo DiCaprio in that role. Whereas on the flip side, watching Oppenheimer, I was like, okay, this is Cillian Murphy playing J. Oppenheimer. great job still. But
Yeah.
just looking at his physical acting, his facial acting in particular. I don't know if they use like facial prosthetics or what, but constantly he was kind of like one eye kind of half closed and talking out the side of his mouth, and I was just really impressed. I was waiting for him to like slip up at some point, because like especially like with actors that do accents, typically you see it with people that are like British or whatever doing American accents. Like if they're in a heated moment, you can kind of hear that accent start to slip at parts, like yelling or screaming or talking at a high volume or fast pace. I was waiting for him to lose it in his various tones, and I mean, he was just holding it down 100%. Looking at his character, how meekish he was at the beginning, how he transformed until the end. Seeing the physical internal torture that he was going through, particularly by the end of the movie, I think that he humanized a person that reading on paper was a complete piece of shit. You did have a marginal, at least I did, a marginal sympathy for him because all of his stuff was very circumstantial.
Yeah.
You could tell that he was easily impressed upon by his uncle. Paul Schrader, to go back to your comments earlier, Ian, said that he had wished that Leonardo DiCaprio had played the cop. The cop was played by Jesse Plemons, which was a very short role in that film. It would have been interesting I could see Leonardo in any role in that film, really, just because he's that good of an actor. He can do it all. But I just walked away really impressed, and I always have an appreciation for him. I always think he's a great actor. I don't know that there's been any year that I've been like, this is the best performance, and it's him. I mean, he won the year for The Revenant, I think, finally. I think The Aviator was a year that he was robbed. I'd say that year certainly was worth, an award. But this year, I think it's between him and Killian. And for me, my money is on Leonardo. That's the horse that I'm riding through the sunset. And I really enjoyed his performance in Killers of the Flower Moon personally. And I'm going to get it started off because I talked about Leonardo. My number 2 film is Killers of the Flower Moon. Came out October 20th, 2023. Critics 7.8 out of 10 on IMDb, 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, 89% on Metacritic, 64% Google users like this. Box office was 154.5. Or excuse me, that was the gross, a theatrical gross, that is 154.5 million. This was a $200 million budget, so not profitable on paper. But back to our streaming deal business, Apple had exclusive rights for this for streaming before this even had like theatrical announcements or anything. So God knows what Apple paid for this film. I'm sure it was something north of 60 million. I don't think that I've read anywhere what it is. So if you do that math there, it's a profitable film.
A lot more than 60 million.
I'm confident.
No way a Scorsese film for 60 million. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just, trying to use some simple math to prove the point that while this on paper, if people look at the box office, think that this is a stinker and a loser, it's a financial success still. 206 minutes long. You guys did make this point earlier. It's a long film. I'm going to give something kind of funny anecdotally here. This year, with the long movies, I took a different approach personally. I really can't sit physically for too long of a period of time because my legs start to go numb because of an ailment that I have in my lower back with 3 bulging discs. So I was really concerned about like how I was going to watch this movie and Oppenheimer for that matter this year. So my wife drove us up to the theater, and I got super stoned on gummy, on edibles, and then smoked on the way in. So and then I had a wonderful cheeseburger.
Yeah,
it did because I was into the intensity of the character acting. I was like on pins and needles the whole time, and I was actually comfortable. I could sit, and I had a nice reclining chair like this.
Ian just like this. Yeah. He always does this. He's always trying to keep his eyes open. Yeah. And he somehow managed to do it through the fucking movie. I don't know how he did it.
I did it.
Because I've seen that drift from Barrett so many nights in the past 20 years.
I did it, boys.
I think that movie probably plays a lot earlier in the theater because you're forced to sit and watch it. I think so, too. My experience was I tried watching it 5 times on streaming with my girlfriend, and I mean, 5 times to get through a movie. And it just, obviously that impacts the experience and all of that. But if you're forced to sit there for the 3 hours, I'm sure it's a totally different experience. And if you're stoned, my God, I bet it's transcendent.
God, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it was great.
He
And
actually
I've
got a whole headdress and everything designed for himself
yes,
while he was in the theater. He had it specially made, and they
I hooked
delivered.
I hooked up with the Osage tribe, and they equipped me
You,
for the
you
Which
viewing.
is
smoked a peace
definitely
pipe.
frowned upon. Smoked a few. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. It was a great experience at the theater too, because I saw it in a small theater. I'd say it was like a 20-seater, and reclining seats. And like I think Pam and I, my wife, were like the youngest people, and we're in our late 30s. So I think I think the average age of the room was like 55 at least. And so it was kind of a different experience. Like that, my only complaint with it, because like when we went in there, I'm like, oh, this is gonna rule because it's like nothing but older people, and so we're not gonna have a bunch of like dickhead kids on their phone in here. But it was actually kind of worse because so a lot of the elderly people forgot where they were sitting, so they were kind of like wandering around at various periods, getting up to go to the bathroom,
Wait a
and like
second. I don't
walking into people.
understand.
And
Yeah.
then secondly, they were forgetting like that their phones weren't on silent, and they were like oblivious to their phone ringing, and then they couldn't answer their own phones, and it was kind of stereotypical
I was
the
there with
elderly with
General
technology.
Custer. I swear to God.
Yeah, they
People
were able
wonder
to
why movie
commentate on the
theaters are dying
historical
out.
accuracy of the film. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean, there's nothing
that was a
pleasurable
problem
about
during
that.
that film, unfortunately. No, no, I would say,
Are you
if
saying
to
that
be
we
honest
should
with you,
eradicate all old people, Ian?
Not I.
I mean, Ian, I don't want to ruin our friendship so early on.
yeah. Let me say that my patience was pretty decent because I was also stoned, so it worked out in that variety as well. So, yeah, great movie, great acting. I was really intensely into the performances. We talked about them: Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro in this, Lily Gladstone. They're pretty much the primary players. You know, you have some bits from Scorsese staples in there, as well as first time appearance from Brendan Fraser in Scorsese's universe, I believe, as the lawyer representing both Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio. Of
Yeah,
course,
he
this
was
is
great.
adapted from a book, Killers of the Flower Moon. Yeah, I agree. And you're not used to seeing like Brendan Fraser play kind of a dislikable or an asshole character, so it's kind of a new spin there too, for sure. Killers of the Flower Moon, the Osage Murders, and the Birth of the FBI. Of course, this is adapted from the book about a true story. You know, there's like originally like newspaper publications about what was going on at the time there. I had the benefit of watching. There was a short documentary on YouTube, and the name of it escapes me at the moment. I'd say it's about 26, 27 minutes. That whenever they first announced this movie, a guy went through and like kind of gave a historical depiction using like historical photos, news clippets, and so on and so forth in the film. And I was kind of like smartened up about the particulars before I went in to watch the film as well. So I was very, like, I was familiar with all the characters involved, the people historically involved. So it was kind of cool to see it from going in with that perspective, like a really fresh historical reading of the events that transpired too. So if anybody doesn't know what the film's about, it's when oil is discovered in the 1920s in Oklahoma under the Osage Nation land. The Osage people are murdered one by one until the FBI steps in to unravel the mystery. And essentially, Native Americans were ruled incompetent to be in charge of their own finances. This is when reservations, and they're still obviously a thing today, but kind of early in their infancy, being granted land, the Osage ended up with land that was rich in oil, but dried up very quickly. So actually, the location of their tribe was the richest people per capita, I think, in the entire world for that brief period. And so there was a lot of people flocking, white people, particularly men, flocking to that area trying to marry native bribes and exploit them and take their wealth. And the FBI, unfortunately, a little too late, got wise to this. There was just crazy shit happening, and the mastermind behind this was all of Robert De Niro's character, essentially, who was a revered person who had connections politically within the state, within law enforcement, which it was kind of a lawless time as well. There wasn't like local authorities and things, in the early 1920s even, and a lot of places unless you were like in a major city like Chicago or New York. Yeah, man, crazy, crazy movie. It's crazy to think this happened. I mean, the natives have had obviously enough done to them. I think that's one of the biggest travesties out there in history, of course, what has happened to the people that were native to North America and how much they've been trampled on. And, I'm of the opinion that we don't talk enough about it. And it's crazy that here in 2024 now, we're talking about people trying to keep that suppressed in our history books. It's just fucking unreal to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what
It's
I found
gross.
really cool about the movie was the way Scorsese chose the focus. Now, originally, I read up on the movie, and it was going to be all about the FBI investigation. And that's when Leonardo DiCaprio first was attached to the movie. And Scorsese himself said he didn't want it to be a white savior movie where the white people come in and save the poor Osage Indians. And so I more so than my enjoyment of the movie, the respect I have for him to change the focus and to focus on the Osage
100%.
and to focus on their stories and to make the white people the interlopers, which is very rare in a movie to do that. I thought
Yes.
that was very brave of him from a storytelling perspective, and I think the gamble makes it a better movie.
I agree 100%. Scorsese, of course, ingratiated himself with the Osage people. They even are now, like even present day, stays in touch with them. They call him Uncle Marty.
That's
And if you've seen the movie, you understand there's like actual footage, like present day, of them participating in rituals and stuff. And Brandon mentioned this earlier. Actually, this is the only part of the movie to me that I did not like, and that's just a personal thing for me, is the mea culpa moment at the end when Scorsese does, and this is the first time he's ever done it with his film. He did it at the recommendation of his editor, comes out and does the reading. It is powerful. I understand it in the context. For me, for whatever reason in my mind, I was just too busy trying to figure out like why that decision at the end. Like I just felt like there was some greater meaning to it beyond the fact that he was just getting out in front of the camera himself for the first time in a vulnerable state, to like drive home the point of this travesty that took place.
well, especially at the
I
end
was
of the
thinking,
movie.
Yeah.
That's late to add a new
yeah, I was
stylistic.
thinking, I don't know if anybody's seen this VOD. I have not. But actually, at the theater presentation, I wanted to mention too, Scorsese comes on the screen for about 90 minutes to 2 minutes and gives a little like opening statements and thanks people for coming to the theatrical
90
experience.
minutes
And
to 2 minutes?
or excuse me,
I think he meant 90 seconds.
90 seconds to 2 minutes. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
No,
He,
90 minutes to 2 maybe minutes.
my mind's too focused on that 90
No, you're
minute
good.
movie runtime that we love. But yeah, for about 90 seconds to 2 minutes, he gives like a little opening salvo on like, thank you for coming. We're here to tell the story of the Osage people. We understand it's a long runtime. We appreciate your patience with the film and allow us to tell the story with the approval of the Osage people. And I was not going to make this movie without their acceptance and approval. So please understand that this is done through that lens. I'm paraphrasing, but it was an unusual theater experience, but like I have all the respect in the world for him for doing it. I mean, I don't know that it turns away anybody, but like that's a lot of theater time between that, the trailers, the runtime of the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, we were in that particular theater auditorium for like 4 hours, so
Yeah.
They have an intermission
no intermission.
because
And
I heard that
For
some
some
theaters
that was
reason,
were
actually
running
like
intermissions without his permission.
Yeah, and then Scorsese and Paramount came after those people, though, that were doing that because it wasn't approved by them. They would only allow theatrical releases if they showed the film in its entirety from start to finish. They wanted no intermissions. So I think maybe to get back to that point you were making earlier, Ian, about it being difficult to get through the movie in one setting is I think that's what they were afraid of, right? They were afraid of people taking breaks in this movie and losing interest or focus in the storytelling and how it just it builds and builds and builds in its intensity up until the end and the payoff, if you will. So what I like to make up in my mind is, so my dad really got into Sirius radio when it launched. He was a huge Howard Stern fan. We cut over with Howard Stern when he went from terrestrial to satellite radio. And Sirius always played like these classic radio programs that were like, narratives. And they would do shit like the original War of the Worlds broadcast, Orson Welles, so on and so forth.
One
And
of the most
in
important
my mind,
broadcasts
the
of all
ending
time.
played without question. In my mind, the Killers of the Flower Moon, that presentation at the end almost likened me because I would actually hear those old broadcasts, whenever he would want to go down nostalgia lane and play that stuff. The ending almost played like that to me in the sense, and I thought, well, maybe this is how Martin Scorsese originally learned about the Osage people, and that's why he's doing this ending. And I thought that would have been kind of a cool nuance if that was the reason why, but I couldn't find anything that supported my theory on that. Again, everything went back to his editor just told him, hey, you should do this, which is cool enough. And this is where you get the Jack White appearance as well in
which
the
is
film.
kind of cool. Yeah.
It is cool. It is cool. That's really the only negative thing I could say about the movie is the ending didn't land as strongly with me that I think it did with others. But also, like, I'm kind of looking for a reason that they ended it that way too, which maybe there isn't really like a profound one.
Can I add one thing? And I'm not expecting to change your mind on it. The only thing that I can think of is whenever he did that, I was shocked that he was up there. A.
Sure, I agree.
And B. I think he's been on such a tangent during these last 15 years of superhero movies, or it's probably longer than that, about actual film, like looking towards things that are more innovative towards film and bringing film to not superheroes but original stories and original ideas. I think this move was something obviously he's never done, and Scorsese probably doesn't have a whole lot of time left out there. And I think it was to show his appreciation for the Osage people and how they took him in and kind of like were cool with him telling the story. But yeah,
I could see that.
It was such a beautiful moment to me because I think I teared up during it. It's just, it's so real.
It is powerful for sure. I'm not taking away from the power of it. It just kind of took me back in a different way. And again, maybe because I was high. So there's that. So maybe it didn't work out too well in that regard. So let's get on to your guys' number twos.
Okay, well, we mentioned it earlier, Saltburn. What I want to say is that both my number two and number one are movies that I was very prejudiced against walking in for various reasons, and they exceeded my expectations. The reason why Saltburn, well, first off, anytime a movie gets a lot of hype, I'm always anticipating that it just cannot live up to it. The real reason Saltburn, actually say it's like an semi-updated, talented Mr. Ripley, with a lot of fluid sexuality and a real feeling of younger people in their 20s in a way that hasn't been. It felt very real, almost the way they talked. But the reason why I didn't want to get into it was so the writer-director, Emerald Fennell, she got a lot of praise for her first movie called Promising Young Woman, which was a rape revenge movie with Carey Mulligan. That's why Carey Mulligan showed up in Saltburn. They had an established relationship. And a lot of people were heralding this as she was a major new voice in film. And I was so incredibly disappointed with how Promising Young Woman kind of crapped out on what its premise was and kind of deflated to me.
Right.
That I was prejudiced about 100%. Seeing her second movie. Now, for me, it's hard enough to make your first great movie and be able to make a second movie. But film careers are littered with the failures of a filmmaker's second movie. That is one of the hardest things to do, to make your second feature of such a level that you will continue to work. And so people like Wes Anderson have done that. Paul Thomas Anderson, Quentin Tarantino, making the second movie, I feel, is the hardest, because people already know what they're going to expect of you. And they and it's a little early to be pigeonholed in. And so in terms of looking at that with the movie, besides how memorable it is, and certainly the cum bath drinking water scene will be memorable forever. I hear they're selling candles now to commemorate that. But just the fact that she overcame the second feature kind of curse and actually made a better movie made me really want to root for her. And to overlook, how I felt deflated by Promising Young Woman, because I didn't feel it lived up to either the premise, the hype, and it took some kind of cop-out shortcuts that just didn't work for me. Have you guys seen that movie?
Yeah, I have. Yeah,
I agree with everything you're saying. The movie did pretty well up until about 50, I'd say 60, maybe even 75% into it. Then it kind of got fantastical and ridiculous in the ending execution, in my opinion. So I didn't much care for it overall. I didn't understand the hype behind it. I had a lot of people, even people that I respect their opinions, that were just like, "Oh, it's a great movie. It's a great movie." I'm like, not for me.
It's how you react to the movie, not what everyone tells you should feel.
Sure.
Yeah.
And certain things are going to land with one person that don't with another. I'm sure that, our lists are probably divisive to other parties as well.
First, I do want to say that the one thing I'm proud of in me and Barrett's relationship is I specifically used to vote on movies. I would like movies, but I would point them towards our friendship a little bit more and what we enjoyed together. Not that I was trying to act like I was being you, but more so like a supportive role in that, because I love the movies that we watch. But now we're able to get down to these movies that we have made completely opposite top fives in a lot of respects. Onesies, twosies that we've picked, I really respect, different people's opinions on things, and the very fact that people can decide for themselves what they fucking enjoyed. Because I cannot tell you how many movies that Barrett may find terrible, or actresses or actors that he finds terrible about in film that
That he's right about.
absolutely
Yeah.
fucking love. So I think that's a beautiful thing about film. Fuck off. Number 2 for me is going to be Poor Things. Poor Things I saw the last out of all the films right before this episode happened. I love weird in movies and artistic direction. Ian, you don't know this, but I paint a lot of miniatures, and I build
Cool.
these miniatures out of scraps and different things that I love to paint and build, and I commission work. This very much felt like that type of film. It is a very art-driven film that is not artsy in its sensibilities. It's very Yorgos. I can't think of his last name. He's made The Favorite. He's made Lobster. He's made Dogtooth, and which is one of the films that I haven't seen. But this dude is the new fuck, I can't think of his fucking name right now.
His
I'll
last
probably tell
name,
you
just so
later.
you know, it's Yorgos Lanthimos.
Yeah. This dude,
Greek fella.
he is. Oh, that's what I forgot to mention. The Killing of a Sacred Deer, which is going to be one of my top movies, I think, of all time. I don't think I'll ever stop thinking about that film. The dude
The
has.
Lobster's my favorite of his, personally.
Yeah,
He
that
is
The Lobster.
so spot on. He is my of recent times. He's my favorite director. I love his comedy and his serious grotesqueness. Ian, you're gonna laugh at this because you're not into D&D, but I love whenever you can incorporate, as a dungeon master, some very serious situations and make a story that really hard hit certain things on people, and then also make it comedic at the same time. I love comedy in general, and this motherfucker is the darkest comedic voice out there with whimsy. He has such a beautiful way of telling a story, and reinventing Frankenstein is one of the. That's an amazing feat. And next year we're gonna get Nosferatu. What the fuck? These are the
Right.
universal movies that we need to be focused on. We don't need to be focused on fucking old bullshit. He has such a beautiful voice, and what I see from him every single film so far has been wonderful. The performances were great. At one point, there's a pug on or a French bulldog stitched to a chicken's ass. That is a creature that walks around this place. At one point, there is a human that is turned into a goat and only bleats. It is there's so many crazy fun moments in this that the 2 hours and 20 minutes that it ran, 2 hours and 21 minutes, I was never looking at my watch, not once. It was so enjoyable. It was
That's an amazing
amazing.
feeling when you're not praying the time passes so the movie ends.
he's one of those directors that's got to watch everything he does just because of his unique vision. And one thing about the film that I know of, Brandon, is the fact that he built all the set pieces for that film so they could control the lighting and add that surrealism feel to it, which is crazy. I mean, it's believable, but also it's just crazy the visuals that they're able to achieve with that. Like as far as visually striking films out there this year, like it's the only thing I could like really compare to it within my mind right now off the get would be something like Barbie,
Yeah.
and that's huge studio budgets, where they're controlling that environment to achieve those shots. It's just it's really beautifully shot for sure.
The one of the things, the last thing I want to mention about this film is that there's only been one other director that I can think of notably that does this. But a lot of old films from the 50s, 60s used like, or even Star Wars, used like models as
Yeah,
a piece that they could use in their film. There's points in this where there's a model that they're filling in, and I can't think of the names of these people that do this, but it's obviously a model, but they have made it so fun and enjoyable to watch. The only person I can think of, Wes Anderson,
He
does
does it a
some of
lot.
these things, but this does it in such a weird, quirky, under the sewer cap type of thing, and it's a completely different world that we do not live in. It's wonderful.
real quickly before we get to our number ones, gentlemen, is there a movie that's coming out in 2024 that's huge on your radar? Is there a movie in particular that you're most excited about seeing?
I would say there are two or three. Furiosa, the new Mad Max prequel. I love anything George Miller
Definitely.
does. He was a doctor who decided to go into filmmaking and was so brilliant. His first movie, Mad Max, just blew up, and his success story is one that always impresses me. What really impresses me is he was in his mid to late 70s when he made Fury Road and did some of his best work. So I'm super excited for that. Although part of me wishes Mad Max was in it. I'm also really excited for the
Yeah, me too.
Roadhouse remake with Jake Gyllenhaal. That looks like goofy fun. I'm a big fan of Roadhouse, the original. I'm very curious as to how they're going to update it and what the tone is going to be. Because really, if they play it too serious, it's going to be ludicrous. And then finally, the last movie I'm really looking forward to because it just gives me the feels is Beetlejuice 2. I'm excited to
Yeah.
Sure.
see
Yeah.
Keaton back in that role with Tim Burton, who while I haven't been overly impressed by his movies of late, when he came out, he was really doing something so theatrical with such a point of view, with such a distinctive look because he was a cartoonist and that's how he did things. And my fingers are crossed that maybe he can bring back some of that magic that's been missing in some of his films like Dumbo and some of the other ones. I think he kind of got derailed on the studio track for a little bit. And while this obviously is a studio movie, I really am hoping that because there really is no Beetlejuice without Keaton and without Burton. And so I'm really hoping the studio gives them a lot of leeway to do their thing because, they're the masters at it. So those are three I'm thinking of.
Jenna Ortega is kind of fun to watch now. She's becoming kind of a scream queen in certain aspects, but she's been exciting to watch, and she's going to be the lead role in that one.
I'm going to piggyback off of you, Ian, real quickly, just because you've mentioned a few of these films, and I know Brandon dropped the Furiosa and Nosferatu comments earlier. So definitely looking forward to Furiosa. Allegedly, Jordan Peele is going to put out a movie at Christmas. I don't even think he's started shooting yet, so I doubt he turns it around that quickly. So I'm skeptical about that, but of course, if he does release a film this year, I'm down with that one. The Korean cat who did Parasite, I forget his name at the moment, and also
Bong
did
Joon-yoon, I think it is. Bong Joon-yoon?
yes, and also
Bong Joon-ho.
also did The Host and Snowpiercer.
The Host is my
His new
favorite of
film
his.
with
Yeah, he's great.
I have a whole leg of movie tattoos, and one of my tattoos is going to be the carving of the fish in Snowpiercer, whenever he cuts down the middle, the belly. I love that film. He's just so great.
Yeah, his new movie with Robert Pattinson is supposed to be coming out this year, so that's on my radar. But my number one film that I'm looking forward to the most is Nosferatu, based on the casting. It's got an incredible cast with it. Nicholas Hoult, Bill Skarsgård, Willem Dafoe, Lily Rose Depp. Nosferatu, I've already seen stills of it. The Willem Dafoe vampire hunter character looks absolutely bonkers.
Yeah.
Robert Eggers is raised by two very intelligent people. He has this ability to lock in his vision with his films that is unmatched with most directors, especially of his generation, and just being short into his filmography right now. So, and the historical accuracy that he always commits himself to as well, is to be commended. And I'm just really looking forward to this. And I think this is his first time officially collaborating with his brother as well. So I'm really looking forward to, I know this is a passion project of his. There's no way he's not going to knock this out of the park. I'm just tickled to death to see what happens with Nosferatu.
So, all of the ones that Barrett mentioned, including Ian. Ian, I was going to ask you about that Gyllenhaal film. Is he doing Roadhouse?
Yeah, Roadhouse, the remake.
No way, man.
It's actually getting released on Prime, and he's I think him and the director, so Gyllenhaal and the director are feuding with Bezos right now to give this a theatrical run, and Bezos is refusing.
The only thing I could mention differently, and Barrett knows it very well, but I want to see Dune Part 2, man. Denis Villeneuve, or however you say his name, is a great director, very art house, his own sci-fi style. I think the only thing that pushes me away from that film is Timothée Chalamet Tigre, only because I don't think he's as good of an actor as they say in LA. He's a good Paul, right, for the most part, but I'm mostly looking at everybody else. Dave Bautista,
Florence Pugh.
Yeah, I mean,
Zendaya.
There's so many
Butler,
good actors and actresses. So Stellan Skarsgård. I love that vision that Des Malchian, that's from he's Polka Dot Man in the last one. I love that vision, and they're taking such. Des Malchian is one of my new upcoming, been around for a while, but upcoming on the ladder that I'm looking at, and the dude's got a fucking vision. Blade Runner 2049. I don't care if you like it or not. I fucking love that goddamn film. I love that film so much. Seeing Harrison Ford back in his role as that, watching Ryan Gosling, which I think is also an actor to watch. The dude's fucking got it, right?
Did you see Prisoners and Enemy?
Yeah,
yes, sir.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Prisoners is one of the best favorite films of. I think one of our favorite films that will always stick out in our head, especially really Hugh Jackman's performance. Fuck me, Jake Gyllenhaal again. Paul Dano, fucking amazing actor.
Creep.
yeah, real fucking creep. I mean, he was the Riddler and fucking creeped all of us out. So yeah, Denis Villeneuve, Dune 2. I hope it delivers, man, because I need some grotesque. I sold a model that I made, like a diorama, as a bookend for the first Dune, and it's really driven me. I could play Dune any single fucking time that I'm painting, and it just inspires me. So I'm really looking forward to that.
So we're at the point, guys, we're going to deliver our number one film of the year. I'll go ahead and get us started off. We'll go with Brandon, and then we'll let Ian, as the guest of honor, round things out for us and have the final say on best film of the year. Now, these is just our own personal opinions, of course, so that's why I wanted to coin this episode as favorite films of the year. I don't really subscribe to that whole best thing because, again, we've hit on these themes many times tonight, and that is everybody has their own individual tastes, and certain things land with certain individuals.
Well, opinions are like a-holes. Everyone has one.
And they often stink, right?
And that's why I hate critics.
Yeah.
Personally.
So my number one film is probably not going to be that big of a surprise for anybody in these type of discussions, but I'm going to give you my reasons why. I approached this film with the same mindset that I did with Killers of the Flower Moon, and that was I got gummied the fuck up and had a little smoke before I went in so I could watch it all in one setting, and that is Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer, my favorite film of the year, and I'm going to get into the reasons why momentarily. Let's hit the analytics stuff first. Came out July 21st, 2023, 8.4 on IMDb, a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes, 89% on Metacritic, 85% on Google users, and then the box office, of course. Here is the other big film this year as far as P&L is concerned. $953.8 million gross. That's almost $1 billion. This film was made. $100 million budget.
It's close to Marvel's Justice League, I think.
The budget of this was half.
Drama. It's amazing.
Jesus.
Yeah, and the budget of this was half of Killers of the Flower Moon. You have to think about that, and think about how visually striking this movie is. So, whenever I'm picking my favorite films of the year, my personal favorite, I go through like these series of check boxes, these check marks in these boxes, if you will. And I have to break this down into many different facets, but to make it, efficient and succinct for the show and this discussion today: soundtrack, cinematography, performances. So again, I would look at this more of a collaborative performance, probably even more so than any film that I've talked about today. This is almost like an intense stage play. Not to say that there isn't individual performances that stand out. Of course, we talked about Robert Downey Jr. earlier. Killian kills it. Emily Blunt, I think, is like a surprisingly great actress in this in particular. I mean, I loved her roles in The Quiet Place as well, but she is kind of the low-key MVP with this in many ways. I love Florence's, that's my girl. That's one of my favorite actresses today. Florence Pugh's brief Jean Talent personification in this. This was another movie that I watched the documentary. So Christopher Nolan did a companion documentary. Now, I think this is his first film after his relationship with Warner Brothers has ended. So this is his first feature film with Universal. And so that being the case, he was able to do a documentary with the Oppenheimer family on the Peacock network that they released. So that kind of freshened me up on the details, although I was pretty familiar with who he was and, the atomic program and so on and so forth and the timing of things and why. But it was nice to have a refresher. And then again, you could acquaint faces and names whenever you went to go see the movie. So I would say certainly my top two picks were certainly impacted by those things as well. My freshening up on the particulars before I went and saw them. That would be big reasons as to why I love this, and these probably landed with me a little bit more. Christopher Nolan's one of my all-time favorite directors, so again, another easy reason to love this movie. It's just crazy if you've seen any of the behind-the-scenes stuff of how they achieved some of the special effects. Christopher Nolan is just a fucking magician, and he's just he's a wizard, and he's we're all playing in his world as far as I'm concerned. And then I mentioned the performances that are great already in this. Matt Damon, we haven't mentioned him yet. He's in this. Jason Clarke, Macon Blair, another also give great performances in this. And this is pretty much a biopic. It's about J. Robert Oppenheimer, his story, his role in developing the atomic bomb. Two real quick points, and then I'm done, is that I've seen a lot of backlash on this film saying that this is a glorification of Oppenheimer, and I did not take that whatsoever as being the case. And in fact, the family has kind of shot back on this film in some respects. It's a cautionary tale. That's exactly what this film is, and that leads me into my next and final point that makes this film so powerful is the ending. I've seen this film twice, again, so another telltale sign that I really loved the film, especially it being a 3-hour film. The first time I saw those nukes going across the planet, I was so terrified I welled up and cried because it is a very real concern. In our lifetimes. It's been concerns in previous lifetimes, Cuban Missile Crisis. We can go back to things like that historically. This is a huge concern, in our present day world, and I think as things like social media has caused us all to be more divisive rather than come together, which is allegedly their original intent. And, the 24 hours news cycle and all this crazy shit that's aided in this, these things have become more and more realistic and a possibility and tangible. And then the second time that I saw this, it wasn't so much a cry, but it just an anxiety that has stuck with me. And I think that this movie can be the most important film of a generation or generations, just based on the cautionary tale that it is. And if the right people watch it, it could deter them from such acts. I don't know if they will, the right people will see it. I don't know if it'll have the impact that I hope that it does. It certainly had that impact on me. And for anybody with a heart, seeing that ending and for you to say it's not powerful, I would question the fact that you had a heart. So that's the reason it's number one for me, gentlemen.
Yeah, whenever I watched this and I said, I said previously that I don't like watching biopics. I even looked at you and Pam and said, this is the only biopic that I've truly enjoyed. It's a fantastic film. Cillian Murphy, love him. All the actors involved, I have respect for them. Being in the military myself, it's a very real threat that happens on a daily basis that we get briefings on and talk about and kind of dark humor joke about. But it did make me feel small, which is what I think the intent is. And I don't think it glorified him whatsoever. I think it showed they fucking destroyed this guy, and like they asked for it, they got it, and then they fucking ripped him apart. I think that the thing that sticks out to me the most about this film is these two interactions with Einstein
Yeah.
that he
Definitely.
has that really
Kind of bookends the film too.
well, especially recent articles about what Einstein said about. There's several new articles about Einstein and what he said. Basically, the fascist movement of his time is what he warned about in the future is that it would come up again, and it would come based upon a religion. And he's right, and that's the other thing that terrifies me. And I think that I will always, if I pull anything from that film, the cautionary tale definitely, but the moments with Albert Einstein were just, and I think that we kind of make him out to be this pop icon, like with him sticking on his tongue and doing all these things, but knew what the fuck he was talking about. And the powers that be, maybe, with propaganda, with him being goofy and EMC squared. They don't focus on him a whole lot because I think he had a lot of controversial viewpoints to a lot of the things that we see to this day. I came as a late bloomer to this genre or this particular franchise. Whenever I did, I was hooked. Whenever we talk about monsters fighting monsters, boy oh boy, the one thing that comes to my mind is God motherfucking Zilla. Fucking destroys shit because he wants to. He has a mind of his own. I feel like King Kong was just fucking doing shit he instinctually as he was more of a human character. Godzilla knows what the fuck is up. And Godzilla -1, it might as well be the best metal album of the fucking year. Talk about destruction. As a PG-13 film, we see so much devastation in that film. Me and Liz are looking at each other in the theater, back and forth, and I see her mouth like, what the fuck? Like, it is insane, the amount of devastation. So much to where even the human interactions are so fucking depressing because the movie, and I'm not going to give you too much on this, so don't worry. The movie is based off of a kamikaze fighter that refuses to be a kamikaze fighter. And it's the greatest dishonor ever to a Japanese man as a kamikaze fighter. And he is looked at as a pariah. It starts with this main character abandoning his post and turns into
I don't know
the
if you're
most
still with us, Brayden.
destructive, insane, basically a representation of the bomb going off in Japan. Both bombs going off. It is. I always took Godzilla as a gimmick thing, as a kaiju thing. One monster fights the other. Blah blah blah. This is fucking real. The thing that you're worried about with Oppenheimer, I am worried about with Godzilla because he is the most terrifying that I've ever seen him. There's nothing wrong with that film. Zero things wrong with that film. I could watch it over and over and over again, and it is the perfect Godzilla movie ever. They harken back to the first film, which was goofy and, whatever. But let's Godzilla be Godzilla and fucking destroy shit. It is amazing. Love it. It was definitely, I battled with this for like 5 minutes after watching Poor Things. if it could beat Godzilla, and I was like, no fucking way. Nothing can fucking beat that. It fucking destroyed, literally.
Awesome.
Loved it.
That's one I haven't gotten to yet this year, so I'm really looking forward. I'm a big Godzilla fan. It's something early in my childhood. My brother and I bonded over, and now we've passed that on to my son. He's a big Godzilla fan. We're waiting on that one for the English dub, just because my son can't read subtitles. He's too young. He's 7, so he can't keep up with it quite yet. So, Ian, what do you have at number 1, sir?
Well, before I tell you, I just wanted to mention something about Godzilla. One of the things I was working on for a bunch of years, and I interviewed about 100 people, was on the popularity of superheroes in America and what it says about American culture. And I spoke with someone who made a very interesting point about how atomic energy in America created superheroes. Atomic energy in Japan created Godzilla. And how there really seems to be a difference between being the dropper and the droppee in terms of a reaction to atomic energy. Which when I heard that, I thought there was a lot of food for thought for that. So to answer your question, the movie that I am shocked I am saying the title about, because I was fully going in expecting to hate it, was Barbie. I think Barbie is for a studio film is a triumph. I never played with Barbie. I barely knew the mythology, but the way that they discuss gender norms and gender expectations, I think is the best part of it. I think it was the smartest part. And so for me, it was really the writing. I mentioned America Ferrera before, and her monologue was so well done. And the fact that they can use a child's toy as a Trojan horse to really discuss something I think young women need to hear and to feel good about, and to, and hopefully maybe because it's Trojan horsed, boys or men can now get an understanding of how difficult it could be in a patriarchal society to be a woman versus a man. And I really loved how they played around with the Kenergy and gave Ken a really interest, because he really was never much of a character.
I'm good at beach.
Yeah,
exactly.
Beach kid. I'm good at beach.
It was a lovely studio movie. I read about how they played with the lighting. I read about how Barbie is slightly, I think they make like some of the cars in the house a little bit bigger than her to have there's a lot of really smart stuff that I think in terms of pop culture, I think this is the best pop culture movie to come out this year, especially imbuing this character with universal concerns, much better than any of the superhero movies I've seen. This is essentially like, they took an IP, which was just a doll, a pretty girl, and by injecting so much intelligence and humanity, it shocked me that I am saying this is the best movie of the year, because I totally didn't expect to.
And history.
It's not my thing. The little side stories, like they caused a pink, worldwide shortage of paint because they used so much, is cute. But I found it honestly endlessly and constantly charming. I forget how long it is. I know it's over 2 hours, but I didn't look at my watch once. And it gets a 6.9 on IMDb. Yeah, it's an hour and 54 minutes. And so not only do I love that, but what I also really love is how Barbenheimer came out this year. And I love that, because I kind of foresee that movies in the movie theater are dying out. It's going to become opera. And, it's going to be only higher, like a concert. And then everyone else is going to watch it either streaming or something like that. And I love that something like Barbenheimer can come out. What I think would be important to totally prove me wrong that the movie theater's kind of shrinking is that there should be a Barbenheimer every month. There is no groundswell for movies now that you just wait an extra 2 weeks to watch it at home. And truthfully, the movie theaters didn't up their game during COVID to give us a better experience watching it. The experience hasn't been elevated beyond I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Alamo Drafthouse, but that's a theater that they have.
Oh, dude,
New York,
that's
Texas,
bread and butter.
Yeah, and you can eat and drink there and all that.
My first marriage, real quick, I'm not trying to cut you off, Ian, but I went to Fantastic Fest as my honeymoon So
Nice.
Alamo Drafthouse is my shit, my first marriage. I
And
can't believe
St.
I'm saying
Louis
that at 37.
St. Louis just opened their first Alamo Draft House December of last year, so it's been open for a year. And I had the honor of interviewing the management there right
That's
after
great.
their grand opening for a podcast episode as well. So
My favorite movie theater is in LA. It's actually walkable. It's a New Beverly Cinema, which is owned by Quentin Tarantino. And so he shows a lot of his movies. He shows all movie prints. You could go catch up on Elvis movies, which I've done there, horror movies.
nice.
And I think now, since we live in a world where kids are spending about 90 minutes to 2 hours on their phones, on TikTok or on YouTube or on any of these social media things, which is an hour. I mean, that's a movie, is what I mean, an hour and a half. I think we're seeing an evolution where, it's like, have you heard of Frank Darabont, the filmmaker? He said one of the smartest things I ever heard. He's the guy who did like Shawshank Redemption. He's the filmmaker who was the first director and showrunner on The Walking Dead. And he was speaking about movies, and this totally was like a light bulb for me. He said the thing with movies is that is the great 20th century art form. But the problem is we're in the 21st century.
Right.
And so all this is to say that movies don't really move the cultural needle anymore. But I really believe Barbie is going to be the closest. And I would be shocked if it didn't sweep a bunch of awards during Oscars.
I think it's probably going set design and costuming, and certainly, if not runner-up, I know they don't really give out awards for runner-up, but it's definitely in those categories.
I think it should get best screenplay.
Too.
Honestly, that to me was really what I marveled at.
It's strong. It should be nominated.
I know a lot of Greta Gerwig stuff, and Tarantino even like talks about that as like over the years what she brings out. He thinks is one of the best movies of the year. Like he constantly brings her up, and she fits in the category of Wes Anderson and Noah Baumbach, which he worked with on this film.
He's having a kid with and just married. Yeah,
this was a beautiful film that I'm with you, man. I watched it and I was not thrown off by it whatsoever. I did not want to look away. The comedy in it, Weird Barbie was wonderful. The Kens were fucking wonderful. And you got her main, which that girl can't do anything wrong. So, I mean, I think she has a fantastic vision. I think she's just a beautiful human being in general. And even whenever you watch comic book movies with her, I don't feel like I'm watching a comic book movie. She just has so much character to add. That film was beautiful. And something that I really hope that my daughter latches onto quite a bit.
It's about time there's a movie that's good for young girls, I think, and younger women, without, it all being about the unrealistic expectations people might have, especially with all the fashion stuff they see. I think this is a wholesome meal for young women, young girls, to have something aspirational, good, with understanding. It doesn't cut too deep, but it cuts.
No, unless you're a conservative man.
It's baseline feminism. The one thing that it does that is kind of an introductory to new women. Yeah, I think it does it well and explains it to kids in a healthy way. For sure.
Yeah, I'm 100% in line with you, Ian, on all these comments that you've made regarding films that you came in with like skepticism on or didn't really have any interest for. Even though I know Greta Gerwig and all the characters involved in this, I was like, I don't really care about Barbie. I watched it randomly here about 4 weeks ago, and I was like pleasantly surprised with it. You made the comment about the Dungeons and Dragons movie earlier. Brandon can attest to this. I was like, I'm not interested in watching that. My kids really wanted to watch it. I was like, okay. I caved last minute. We watched that. I enjoyed that.
They wanted to watch it because Uncle Brandon's into it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Saltburn too was another movie. Initially, I was like, I don't know about that movie. With the failed delivery on the first film for that young woman, I ended up loving Saltburn too. So yeah,
hard to get excited about drinking cum out of bathwater, but it works for the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's enough. If I hear it beforehand, I'm like, I don't know if I want to see that.
Well, it's funny that you say that, Ian, because me and Barrett have our special drink that we make every single year, and it's called cum and bathwater. It's basically like a cement mixer with whipped. Whipped cream topping.
Whipped cream,
It's kind of like a
right.
starry night. It's kind of like a starry night, but little eggnog in
Excellent.
there. All right, gentlemen. Well, I'm feeling pretty confident about the material
Me
that we
too.
brought today for folks, and
Thank you so much for
we got a
having
good
me on.
variety
This
of
was a lot of
films.
fun, guys.
Hell yeah! And
Yeah, man.
of course, we want everybody to check out Ian Fischer and his work of Historic. We're going to have his links on the on-demand version of the episode. Ian is for hire as well. Consultation, ianfischer.com. Ian at ianfischer.com is his email address, and I think he has his phone number published to get a hold of him as well on his website for consultation. So, of course, you guys have seen him tagged across our various social media feeds too. And if you've been a listener to the show, you should be familiar with him as well. You guys know Tom the Tank Engine Tickle as well, aka Brandon Stewart, aka Knobnard from Knobnard's Closet, Edaws Inn. Be sure to stay in tune with his programming he has going. Brandon, I know you got some guests coming up here very soon for some of your live broadcasts.
Next up, next weekend on Saturday, I have It's What Evan on January 13th. White Tiger Hobbies, I think. I don't want to get that wrong, but White Tiger, February 24th. And then as these go along, I'll just kind of fill everybody in beforehand and let them know we got some big guests coming up, a lot of overseas people, and a lot of people I admire. So, should be good.
And of course, Brandon's exploring a lot of those people in the D&D custom RPG gaming realms as well, and bringing together people in those communities, diorama making, mini painting, so on and so forth. Really like accentuating the artistic realm of what people do, whether it's D&D, 40K Warhammer, again, custom role-playing games, all that fun stuff. Guys, we appreciate you all tuning in. I'm Barry Insane on Instagram and Twitter. Follow the ATI Podcast at the ATI Podcast on Instagram. Stay in tune with what we got going. We're everywhere. Good night and good luck. Stay safe out there.
This is Barrett from the ATI Podcast. Each week, Josh and I discuss current events, pop culture, music, TV, movies, politics, sports. Nothing is out of bounds. You can also tune in to learn about rising artists, small businesses. Whether it's music, graphic design, filmmaking, or even a brick-and-mortar mom-and-pop shop, we will be spotlighting folks and their endeavors. Listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Anchor, or anywhere you enjoy your podcasts. Just search ATI Podcast. We would like to thank you for your continued support, and as always, please stay safe out there.
Hey, this is Josh from ATI Podcast. For show updates and news about the podcast, follow us on social media. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ATI Podcast 22, on Twitter at podcast_ATI, on Instagram at the ATI Podcast, on TikTok at ATI Podcast. DMs are always welcome. Have a question for the show? You can always email us at atipodcastquestions@gmail.com. Stay safe out there.